Welcome to the Yeshiva Shalmaila. This is Dovid Lichtenstein, and this week we're going to continue our program about Beis Din. And I think that the Beis Din process is convoluted. It's difficult to understand, and I think it's incumbent on anybody who ever plans on having in the Torah, do them a favor, send them here. We could probably save them a lot of grief. There are many wonderful Beis Din. Going to a Beis Din, if it's done Kiroi, the Lakim Nitzav Badas Kil, it's really about the majesty of our Torah becoming alive and real. Unfortunately, since we are in Galus and we have no way of enforcing it, it's unlike Eretz Yisroel where, the Toen over there have real gravitas and teeth, and it's a little bit more like the Wild West here, basically. Anybody who could print up a shingle and pick some city in Europe, the Chengadayan, I don't know if there is such a place, I'm just, pick a city, right? Tarn of a Rav, and the Av Beis Din Tarnav. I mean, there's no licensing. It's like, imagine if anybody could take the title of Coca-Cola or say, I'm the mayor of New York, but that's what it's really like. So you don't know what you're getting into for most cases. So it's incumbent. Listen to this, you'll come away educated. I don't know if you'll agree or disagree, but educated you will. We will start off with a Rabbi Gann, Rabbi David Cohen, America's great Poseik. We will have from Lakewood, New Jersey, Rabbi Yudel Shain, many years of experience in Dinei Torah. We will have one of the premier Toanim in America, Rabbi Simcha Roth. From Eretz Yisroel, he will be from Borough Park. From Eretz Yisroel, Rabbi Tuvya talk about the differences. From Ohio, Rabbi Yaakov, Rappaport. From Philadelphia, Rabbi Ephraim, Goldfein. Many different opinions. Certainly, after you finish this, it's around a 2-hour program, you will come out much more knowledgeable and smarter. And some of the things we'll be speaking about is what happens when you get remanded, you get your nitva to a rogue Beis Din or by one of these rogue rabbanim. They send you a hazmana, and if you don't respond, I got from a fellow once, Rabbi Kirsch, three hazmanas in 3 days. Allah is, if you don't respond to the third hazmana, they could put out a thing. So I respond, I'm willing to go. No, that's not the Beis Din we want you to go to. And if you don't respond, we're going to hang up signs all over town in 3 days, basically, that you're if anybody who has kids in Shidduchim, this is quite a threat. So what happens when you get, Muslim to one of these rogue Beis Dinim? They hang up a shingle and suddenly they could cover your whole shul with signs that you're So we'll have some really interesting advice how to deal with these situations, and also, should you be going with a Toen, without a Toen? What are the Beis Dinim that you do sense, you will come out, you feel you were respected, and where are the Beis Dinim? Well, you will not be respected, and basically you can sit there and listen to insults for an hour, something that would never happen in a court of law, and the Beis Din just sits there smiling. So you will get a great education here. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface in 2 hours, but it's some place to start. Before we begin, I do want to say a word on the parsha, and I want to speak about something that I think is very important. I want to speak about commitment, because life is a journey. It's a journey towards your goals, your dreams, your visions, and to remain on that path requires commitment, requires courage, requires bravery, but it also requires commitment. And I want to speak about as the Maisa of a similar banim. I want to speak about commitment, about staying loyal to what you said you were going to do long after your mood has passed. Like in the United States, not by Anash, but divorce is at 50 or 60%. By Anash, unfortunately, it's rising too. Nobody under a chuppah, right, ever imagines, they say, Harei Mukadeshes Li, I do, but so many fall apart. The mood is fabulous under the chuppah, but what happens after the mood has left you? So without commitment, all there are the promises and the hopes, but not really the tools that you need, the determination to get towards those goals, right? Without commitment, you have excuses. With commitment, you have results. You can't conquer what you're not committed to. That's what I want to speak about briefly. So I want to ask a few questions. Yitzchak Avinu is Midas Hadin. Din means doing always what's right. And yet, Yitzchak, it says at the end of time, the Gemara in Shabbos and Daf Peites says, the Rabbi is going to want to judge Klal Yisrael, and he's going to call in Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and he's going to say, listen, they dropped the ball a lot of times, the Jews. And Avram's going to say, you're right. And Yaakov's going to say, you're right. And Rabbi is going to say, Loi b'sabi taimi v'loi b'dar dekimili. And Yitzchak's going to say, you know what? Rabbi Nishon, palga alai, palga alach. Let's do a 50-50. So since I'm taking half the responsibility, you take half the responsibility, I take half the responsibility, and be dandam lekavschus, which he does. And the question is, what does that mean, 50-50? It sounds almost like a joke, like something that happens in the shuk. I want to suggest something to you. Everybody struggled. Vayehav Yitzchak es Esav. Yitzchak loves Esav. Do you know that he never calls Yaakov B'ni in the Torah? He goes out of his way of his love. The Chidas mentions that, to mention his love for Esav. Even though Esav, Yitzchak becomes blind from the Besamim, the incense to Avodah Zarah of the wives of Esav. Hard to imagine he doesn't know who Esav is. And he has one son who's asking really stupid questions, like, hey, how do you take Maisa from salt? And he has another son who's Rabbi Kivega. Yaakov Avinu couldn't be less than Rabbi Kivega. And yet, he sticks with Esav. Another thing where you see Yitzchak just sticks Eliphaz, right, his grandson, the son of Esav, the father of Amalek, was Niskatel. Rashi says, B'chekei shel Yitzchak. Yitzchak does not abandon him. He sticks with Esav, sticks with Eliphaz. Here's another interesting thing. Avram and Sarah, Chamasi Alecha, it seems they had disagreements. Their marriage, they had issues at times, I guess. But the Torah says that. And Rabbi Shalom says, Kala Sha'im Alecha Sarah Shma B'Koila. By Yaakov and Leah, what does Yaakov say? By her first child, by Leah's first child, Ki Ruven, Ki Ro Hashem Ba'anye. God has seen my pain, and she names him. Imagine naming your first kid. If you're not getting along so well with your husband or wife, you're saying, lots of pain. You call your kid Pain. Your second one gets better. Ki Shama Hashem Ki Snua Nechi, Leah says. She says, I was hated. And she calls him Shimon. Doesn't pull no punches. Imagine naming your child Hate. And then look at Yaakov and Rachel. Vayichar af Yaakov b'Rachel. So we see both by Avram. I'm not saying what they are. Maybe these are Mishalim, they'll say. But certainly some type of a discord, whatever it may be. And with Rivka and Esav, nothing. And you would think it should be different. Yitzchak is Midas Hadin. I do what's right. What is Din? Din is, L'kei Loirech Din, right? Din is about pachad, right? It's about fear, and yet perfectly peaceful. And as I want to suggest an answer, we ask for parnasa, Machalkel Chaim Bechesed, in the bracha of Yitzchak, the second bracha of Gvura, right? Which parnasa should be in the bracha of Avraham Avinu. We say Machalkel Chaim Bechesed in the bracha of Yitzchak. Something seems very wrong. So the moral in Baba Basra and Daf Yud and Agad says on the Poseik, Malv Hashem Chayin and Dal. He says if you take care of a pauper, if you feed the pauper, it's like you become a lender to the Rabbi Shalom. The moral says, you know why? He says the Rabbi Shalom created the world, maybe Al Midas Hadin, right? But to do the right thing. And you know something? If you created it, you own it. You broke it, you own it. So he says, the Ani says to Rabbi Shalom, you have to feed me. You created me. I'm yours. And do the right thing. So Din cuts two ways. Yes, the Rabbi Shalom says to us to do the right thing, but the createe, which is us, says, and therefore feed us. You do the right thing. So Din is a two-way street. And you know what Yitzchak says? Esav, my son, I gave birth to you. And when I gave birth to you, I didn't put contingencies on. If you're the son who goes to the yeshiva that I want, and marries the girl that I want, and takes the job that I want, and the shtella that I want, and makes the money, then I am impregnating my wife. No father makes that condition. He does it without a t'nai. So you know what Yitzchak tells us? You created it, you own it. You married her under the chuppah. Did you make t'naim? Did you sign a shtar kafel? Right? Did you a t'nai kafel like b'nei Gadu, b'nei Ruvain? If you do, no. You know, with your wife, your spouse, your husband, you married him in sickness and in health. With here or without here. With what Yitzchak is about commitment. Din is about I gave my word. My word is my bond. I'm oimid b'diburi. Yitzchak is the antidote to an America of disposable plates, right? Disposable clothing. Nobody fixes it anymore. We throw it in the garbage. It's not worth the time. Disposable record, iPhones and cell phones. Nobody fixes it. It's too expensive, right? The antidote is that Yitzchak, disposable tea bags, and yes, disposable marriages and disposable relationships. And Yitzchak stands for commitment. Maaseh avos labanim. None of us will ever have a child like Esav. No matter what your son does, it's not going to be a child like Esav. None of us will have a grandson like Eliphaz. Not one of our listeners. And right now, we're up to 20,000 listeners a week, Baruch Hashem, right? None of us, I promise you, you heard it from me, none of you or us will have a child like Esav or like grandson like Eliphaz. And you know what? But yeah, Yitzchak es Esav. You made a commitment to something really powerful. It says about you, when a person says, I can conquer anything because I'm committed to it, right? When you're committed to something, you don't accept excuses, just results, right? Without commitment, there are no ends to our journey. All you have are promises and hopes, but no ends. Yitzchak is the Av of commitment. And what happens with commitment at the end of time? He says to the Rabbi Shalom, Palga alayu, palga alach. You made a commitment too. So it's at least 50% your responsibility. And that is the taina that takes us to that is the taina that brings us to the end of our journey, to the Gula Hasida, commitment. Before we go to our guests, let's ask the riddles of the week. We'll ask one riddle this week, but it's a good riddle because you could use it many times if you ever speak by Sheva Brachas, which many of you hopefully will, or you have a chassin or a kala. What does it say in the parsha, at the end of the parsha? Vayelach Esav el Yishmael vayikach es machlas bas Yishmael. So Rashi says, a little bit later in Lamed Vav Gimel, Rashi says, brings from a medrash, Gimel moichel lahu al avoy neseim. 3 get full mechila. One of them is Hanoi Seisha. Rabbi Shalom, the day of the chuppah, by the chuppah, he forgives him. And what does he say? Why is she called Machlas Shenimchelu Aveinesav? It's Yerushalmi in Bikurim in Paragimel. And by the way, I saw a cute word. Reb Chatzkel Kuzma, great Polish Rebbe. I think he was a Talmud of either Pshischa or the Chayz, I forget. He says, why do we learn Gimel Moichlin of Amokalavay Naiseim from Esav, who marries the daughter of Machlas Bas Yishmael? We couldn't find Episim or Hamish, a person, to learn this klal that Gimel Moichlin of Amokalavay Naiseim. He says, no, we learned it after from Esav. Chaskell says, because you could say that chassid, the Rabbi Shalom is going to be Moichlin. So what did we take? Poseik takes the worst guy, Esav, like one of the worst guys ever, right? And he says, if the Rabbi Shalom forgives him, he forgives any chassan. That's what Chatzkel Kuzma say. So here's the question. And by the way, that's why the chassan wears a kittel, right? Because it's like Yom Kippur. In other words, it's a siman, a moichel oil kalav sayim. So here's the question. The Magen Avram and Tafkuf Ayin Gimel brings the minig that it's really also brought in Shulchan Aruch, and Shulchan Aruch brings it in on the spot in Tafkuf Ayin Gimel in the Ramah. He says that a chassan fasts on the day of his chuppah, and so he says the reason the Magen Avram says why does he fast? Because moichlin le'al kol avodah sayim. So here's the question, political question. Rashi in our parsha, when he brings the story of when he marries Machlas Bas Yishmael, right? Rashi says, Haisif Rishal Rishisai. He did another Rishis on top of his regular Rishis. In other words, after he married Machlas, he kept all the other wives. He kept his whole harem. Rashi says, Haisif Rishal Rishasai. And Chazal also say that day he did a whole bunch of Averis, the day he got married. So the question is, where do we learn the concept of Chasin, Meichel, and Kalav and Esayim? From Esav. Esav, the same day, was a Rasha and did a lot of bad things that day. And yet, the Rabbi Shalom was Meichel him by his chuppah, Machlas Bas Yishmael. So why does the Shulchan Aruch and Tafkaf Ayin Gimel say a Chasin should fast on the day of his chuppah, when certainly Esav wasn't fasting if he was doing all these terrible things on the day of his chuppah, and he was still forgiven? So the very Mekoira we learned as halacha did not do any of the dinim that the Shulchan Aruch says that you should do to be able to be nimchal. That is our riddle of the week. Let's go to our wonderful program.
We have the honor of having with us Mereinu Hagoyin Harav Reb David Cohen, the Mechaber of 25 or 30 Sfarim, the Rav of Gvul Yaavetz, and in my eyes the Poseik of America on the phone. Shalom Aleichem, Reb David.
Aleichem Shalom.
We've spoken the first time we had the Rav. He spoke about agunis. There's in general a frustration by many people you speak to about going to Beis Din. That there are all kinds of illegitimate batei dinim. There's biased batei dinim. Give us a little bit of a sort of from besides the halachic point of view, but from a practical point of view. What does somebody do? Like you have an Isha, she's called to a Beis Din that is, let's say, from a particularly biased against Nashim. Or a person is called to a Beis Din that there's so many kangaroo, there's no license required to open a Beis Din. And because of this, people get very frustrated. Give us a little bit of a handbook. What is either a business person or a woman who's going to, when do you have to go to Beis Din? When can you say, I don't find that Beis Din legitimate, etc.?
I'm aware of the problem, very much so. I must say I have to agree that there are batei dinim that are biased. Unfortunately, I don't even want to give them a label as batei din, but unfortunately there are what we would call batei din that are makabelei shochad. I know some of them. And certainly in the past there have been people that were notoriously so. Everyone knew that they were equal opportunity, but they didn't. For money, they would either give a het to Meir Rabbanim and hide the get from a woman, which was something which is one of the greatest riches in the world. And these equal opportunity, but they didn't, would also be kaifa shaloi kedin. And where al pidin, it's really a get musa, and take money from a woman and do this shaloi kedin and get a get for this woman, which al pidin is not a get, thereby being matar an eishes ish who would marry someone and she's really an eishes ish. So there were these equal opportunity, but they didn't, that did anything you would ask them to do for money, unfortunately. So what a person who's Yirei Shemayim has to do is to avoid these, but they didn't. Don't forget, if you get a hasmana from a Beis Din, you have the right of choice to say that you want to go to another Beis Din, a so-called honest Beis Din. So you're not really compelled. You're compelled al pi halacha to go to Beis Din, but you're not compelled to go to the specific one that your antagonist sent you a hasmana from. You have that choice. So, of course, someone who gets a hasmana should really inquire of Rabbanim that he maintains are honest Rabbanim, where they should go, what their response should be. There, of course, are halachas where a person does not have to respond to a hasmana from such a Beis Din. Risking a siruf from such a Beis Din But if it's known that these Batei Din are really not, let's call them reasonable or honest Batei Din, so their sirufim don't really mean much in the world of public opinion. So it's important for a person to ask of people that he trusts how to respond. There are certain situations, and I know Rav Moshe Zatzal and many other Gedolei Yisrael would permit a woman who is being kept as an aguna, and most of the time these women aren't given money for mezainis, and they were told you can go to court because of the husband's attitude, and you don't have to go to a Beis Din. Again, I know of horror cases where women who didn't get a hira but they didn't to do that, or even if they got the hira from Gedolei Yisrael, when the Gedolei Yisrael maintained that you don't need a heta Beis Din, and that's why they gave the heta. So there were, but they did nefarious, but they didn't, that gave a siruf to the women and gave a heta me'erabanim, as described above, which was shelo kedin, because if they're giving a heta me'erabanim to the husband, they must give a get to the woman. But again, there are people, there is evil in this world. We do whatever we can, and we do it to help the nirdaf who is doing kedin. That's the best we can do.
So what happens when somebody wants to be teveya somebody to a din Torah, and the other party will only go to a Beis Din, which is one of these, what you would say, nefarious batei dinim? What is that person to do?
Well, al pi halach, if that person says, I want to go to what we would say in Yiddish, an ehrliche Beis Din, the other Batei Din have no right whatsoever to give out a siruf, and they are considered Rishoyim if they give out a siruf.
No, but I'm asking the other way. If a Teveya wants to take somebody to an Ehrliche Beis Din,
yes,
and the Nitva only wants to go to one of these very nefarious Batei Din.
Unfortunately, there is evil in this world. So the Ehrliche Beis Din, the other person can get away with it by going to an evil Beis Din. It's like a person who has the money and knows the Beis Din that will take money, we would call it sheikhad, and rule his way, or generally they're bought off. So there's evil in this world. I don't have an answer to many of the evils which are perpetrated. I would try my utmost to help the person who's doing kedin.
Well, would that person
I
be
don't
able?
Have an answer.
Would that person
a great
be
deal
able?
Of evil.
Would that person be able to go to Arkois if the only Beis Din that the other person would agree to go to is one of the quote unquote nefarious?
If that person would go, I would advise this person to go to a Beis Din. Usually, Batei Din know about other Batei Din. So if the Ehrliche Beis Din would hear about these Batei Din that are evil, I can't imagine that they would refuse to give a heter arkos to this person. Sometimes religious politics keeps them from doing it. But we have to try to help all these people who are nerdafim shalokidin. That's about the only thing I could say. What would you say about a person that someone, he doesn't know who, stole a lot of money from him? You say, look, it's hashgacha. I can't help you. I don't know what to do for you. Someone stole money and you were mafsid money, but I don't have advice for you. So it's unfortunate that there is evil being perpetrated in this world.
Joining us from Lakewood, New Jersey, is Rabbi Yudel Shain, who for many years was a Toen and a boyer in Dinei Torah. He's a musmach of Rabbi Levin, among others. He's a Talmud of Beis Gvul, and he helps out people who have Dinei Torah with advice. Welcome, Rabbi Shain.
Shalom Aleichem. Heyoist that the yahrzeit of Reb Aaron Kotler is this Shabbos. I'm going to say a quote from Reb Aaron Kotler, which was quoted by Amos Bunim. The truth must be heard even if the public does not like the sound of it. Whatever the circumstances, regardless of consequences, the truth must be stated loudly, clearly, and unequivocally.
Okay.
Now let me quote, basically, there's a Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Kuf Lamed Tes. Tanya Rabbi Yossi ben Elisha Oimer, Im Isa Dur, if you saw a Dur, that Tzoris Rabbi's boys all of, that there's a lot of Tzoris, which that's exactly what we have now. Tzeyu Bedoik Bedaini Yisrael, check the Dayanim of the Din Torah. Check Kol Pirani Shabal Oilam, all the Piranis that come to the world, Loiba El B'Shvil Daini Yisrael, Shenema Shimu Noas Roshe Bais Yaakov Tzina Bais Yisrael, and it continues over there. And it says that basically, because of that, the Rebbeinu Shalom brings Gimel Piranios, Keneged Gimel Averis, and Eina Kadosh Baruch Hu Mashish Chinas Al Yisrael At Sheyichlu Shoftim V'Shotim Rois B'Yisrael, and you could see the Gemara in Kuf Lamed Tes, which is basically where we are sitting today, and we could basically put the blame very much on the Dayan Yisrael. Now the question is, how much are we allowed to talk and say not to violate the Hilchos Lashon Hara, etc., etc.? So the Rambam in Hilchos Deis Perek Vav Halacha Ches says the following: Aval b'divrei Shemayim im loy chazer by b'seiser, if he hasn't gone back b'seiser, machlimi oisei barabim, you embarrass him barabim, umafarsim chetlo, and you publicize his chetom, umacharfen oisei b'fanav, umavazen oisei ad sheyachzer lemutav. The question is, what's the makor of the Rambam? The Kesef Mishnah, who always brings the makor, writes one word, poshet. Now the Chafetz Chaim in Hilchos Lashon Hara Klal Daled Sif Zayin says, L'chein muter lachlimoy u'lesaper b'gnusay bein b'chapafanav bein b'shaloi b'fanav and tzarech l'shafta l'tzad ha'choiv v'lishbech bois olav and muter l'farsamoy l'galis chatov b'shar basrabim. Then the Chafetz Chaim writes interesting in a letter, letter number 46, Chavav, Memvav. Hinni Maidia Bashar Basrabim, I'm notifying, Shebamokam Arisas Hadas, V'churban Hadas, Nasa Kolze Kalocha, and Mitzvah Rabba, V'choiva Gedoyla. That's what the Chafetz Chaim says. Last is Kol Mashe B'choilis Ligdor Gered Der V'lamad B'peret V'ein B'zem B'shum Shum Isser. Then the Chafetz Chaim writes, Clearly, I'll call Gedoyle Yisrael Hamachshem Bazev Einam Yotzim B'Macha Gedoyle. So evidently, the Chaim, who wrote the Hilchos Lashon Hara and everything, says it's important and very urgent to go out and publicize these things and go out with a big macha in these things. And you have the Gemara in Shabbos basically says that this is what's causing all of our tzaros. Okay, now, so let's hear any questions.
Rabbi Shain, given that Hagdama, what advice would you give? Somebody calls you up to say, Rabbi Shain, give me some advice. I was Muslim to a Din Torah by Beis Din Ploini. Give me some advice. What would the advice be?
I would tell them like this. If it's a Beis Din that allows Toanim, do not go to that Beis Din. Because I've been by Bebeino for them. They will basically strip you down. It's basically the Batadinim that allow the Toanim there. Is basically an underworld syndicate that so-called operates under the color of law. And they will basically, once you sign that Shtori Berurim, they have you for the rest of your life. They will make your life miserable. They will strip you from every right that you have, etc., especially when they have certain Toanim, which the most famous one basically is somebody Gershon, which I'm not going to say last names, obviously, because I'm not interested that they're one of this program and others should get sued. So I'll just leave it by that thing, Gershon. It's unbelievable what he does. I mean, I'm familiar with certain cases that he's done where he puts the pressure on them, and there was Marshall. He had a case where it was the Kaladas Yeshua and the Broya Kehillah had a case against a Rav of one of their shuls. And they brought in the Novominsker, who was a Rosh Hashiva by the Broya Kehillah, to be over there by the Torah to be able to testify in their behalf. So this Gershon...
Wait, explain the case. There was a yeshiva that wanted to get rid of a...
it was a yeshiva, it was Kahaladas Yeshurim had a shul located in Monsey.
Right.
And the Rav over there, they decided to basically give him his walking papers.
Okay.
So he took them to the Torah.
Right.
And this Rav went and took this Gershon for his Toen.
Right.
So Gershon walks into the thing, and one of the people that was there, not as a boyer or anything, was the Novominsker.
Right.
So this Gershon says, Rav Perlau, I don't know how to address you. You are a Yeshiva in Broya, you're a Novominsker Rebbe, you're the president of Aguda, you're Rosh Moyetzes Gedolah Torah, so I'm going to address you with the following of Lo Seguru Mipnei Ish. That's it. And he really, really embarrassed him in public there. Unbelievable. And, all the members of Moyetzes Gedolah Torah have plenty of words to say about this so-called Toen. Then the same Gershon, when he appeared in front of the Beis Din of America, after the arbitration agreement was signed, he asked all of the Rabbanim over there, do you have Smicha? And they all responded yes. He says, could I please see the copy of your Smicha? That chutzpah. So
he asked the Rabbanim of the Beis Din if he could see the Smichas?
Yes.
Okay.
And Rabbi Herschel Schechter was one of them that was there at that time. And
he asked Rabbi Herschel Schechter if he could see his Smicha.
Yes. I'm just telling you what happened. So they asked all parties to please leave the room for a few minutes. And then they called back in everybody, and they said the parties could come in, but none of the Toyanim are welcome to come in. So they said, well, we're not going to continue the thing. So basically, Rabbi Herschel Schechter said, I'm sorry, you signed Shtar Berurim. We could make the rules and regulations the way we want. And in Shtar Berurim, it does not say any place over there you have a right to have a Toyin. We will continue this in Torah without a Toyin. And from that day on, the Beis Din, the RCA Beis Din of America, do not allow any Toyanim by their Beis Din at all. They only allow attorneys.
Could you imagine in a court if a lawyer got up and asked the judge to see his law degree?
But this is what happened. Now,
Rabbi Shain, are you saying then that Toyanim, certainly, you have these rogue Toyanim, right, and we'll basically have the ability to be mavaza not only the Balei Din, but even Rabbanim who come in, the Novominsker Rebbe, basically they have free reign and the Beis Din will not shut them down?
Right, and the reason the Beis Din will not shut them down because the Batei Dinim in all these places basically is an underworld syndicate that all the Toyanim bring them the cases. The Toyanim basically pimp for the Beis Din. They bring them the cases, they bring in the money, so they're not going to tell them anything. They'll go along with whatever they want. They could drag it out 50 sessions, 100 sessions, whatever they want, because they are the ones that are bringing in the money. They're pimping for the Beis Din. The Beis Din's not going to do anything.
Okay, so again, my name is Dovid. I come to you.
Okay, I tell you here.
Dinei Torah. I was called to a Din Torah in front of Beis Din Pliny in Lakewood, Muncie, New York. Give me some advice. Well, again,
okay, so I tell them like this, which I've sent many people. I said, the Cheshimish Din Torah, go to the Beis Din of America, the RCA Beis Din, and that's where you take the Torah. There's no Tayan or anything, and you'll get a very glatta decision. Okay,
but Rabbi Shain, let me
one
push
second.
Back.
I want to bring out one thing.
Rabbi Shain, let me push back at you with the problem it is. So, I run a business for many years, and basically everybody who does business knows that I'm not going to say no to a Din Torah. So we had a tenant in a shopping center who I never met, never knew who it was, and he didn't pay his rent for a year. So they took him to court, and this guy called me to a Din Torah. So I said to the or it was a different case, and I said, okay, I'll go to the Beis Din of America because they have a reputation as being very honest. So they hired this fellow by the name of Kirsch, and he sent me 3 hazmanas 3 days in a row. So after he got the first hazmana, the same day I emailed him. I said, I'm happy to go to Beis Din of America. So he sends me another hazmana. He says, this is your second hazmana. I don't accept the Beis Din of America, and if you don't, I'm going to put out a ksaf sirav, basically, which they'll plaster all over your whole town. So you have these gangsters, guys. Like
okay,
this,
so I had the same.
There's 3 days, and when you say the Beis Din of America, which because they don't accept Toyanim, and that's an honest Beis Din, they don't have any.
So what I did,
they threaten to plaster your name all over. What do you do then?
So I've had these kind of things. That's exactly what happened. So I tell them, pick yourself up, go down to the Beis Din of America, and sign the Shtar Berurim, and notify this Kirsch and these other ones, those are the names that I've had, basically that I signed the Register Berurim, and if you do put out a Ksav Sirov or any settle against me, there will be a court case against you, and the court has awarded already against Beis Din Mansi $10,000 a day fine if they put out these kind of zettlach and they don't withdraw it when a guy signed someplace else Shtar Berurim.
That's interesting. I didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, I picked it up. It happened about 5-6 years ago. So I always tell them the first thing is don't say I'm going to this Beis Din. I signed Shtar Berurim at this Beis Din. You know, it's interesting when I've sent a few cases.
And I want to tell you, in my case, I sent the guy back a letter, and I cited him all the places in Choshe Mishpat where it says that the Nitva has a right to choose a Beis Din if it's a Beis Din Kavua and a Beis Din Choshev. And I got a tshuva like that from Rav Vosner's Beis Din. But these gangster Toanim and or Beis Dins, like anybody who wants can hang up a shingle. They don't care about the Shulchan Aruch, nor do they care about and the chances of so you're the chances of the guy somebody going ahead and plastering the town with a sirup is a real threat, you know.
So I had that after I sent off a few cases like that to the Beis Din of America, among other button where I sent. I get a call about 2-3 weeks later from the one that lost. And he says, I want to thank you very much. I say, weren't you the one that lost the case? He says, yes. But I see exactly where they're coming from, and they were 100% right. I looked at the case wrong. You know what? He lost the case. But he says they were very glot. They asked the questions correctly. They asked for my documentation and everything, and I realize now I was wrong. Most of the other Batadina, even the guy that's right will sometimes tell me, you know, I know that I really wasn't right, but this Beis Din over here, because of the Toen that I had, that's the way I won the case. There was another case, a very interesting one.
I didn't understand your point, Rob. What's the point you're making?
The point is very simple, that when you go to an honest, straight Beis Din, even the one that lost the case
recognizes that he was
that he was wrong with the case. And basically, and the Beis Din was correct in ruling against him.
Right.
Very rare that you'll get that somebody will call you. But when I sent to the Beis Din of America, that's what they came back with. There was also a different case that went to the Beis Din of America, and Beis Din Mansi says, no, we don't recognize, but he went there anyways. And then he asked him, Bemed and Tuni, give me the chapter and verse. They did, and he brought it into the Beis Din Mansi, and they went through it. They said, I got to tell you, the Beis Din is very, very much on target. But again, because they want to have the Toanim that bring them the cases and this and that, they'll come up with these things. We don't want to accept this one. We don't want to accept Gestetna. We don't want to accept this other one in New City, the Beis Din for Beis Din Vad Hadin Dvaira. But again, if you go down to a Beis Din, you sign the Shtar Berurim, you don't notify them I'm going to this Beis Din. I signed Shtar Berurim by that Beis Din. I dare you to put out a Ksav Sirov because you are going to be taken to court and you have no right to put out against me because I'm in full compliance.
Okay, so now let's move on. So,
okay, now we have another.
Slow down. I want to walk through this. So you've been one of these gangsters of Flim Beis Din sends you Azmana. You say you go down to another Beis Din. You go to Beis Din of America. Give us the 3 or 4 Batei Dinim in America that you think are the most straightforward. They don't. There's no shtick. You know. So let me tell you another case that I had. I was once Muslim to the Torah. It was the most absurd claim. The guy hired a Toen by the name of Fried, a famous Toen, and something that should have taken the Beis Din 3 hours turned into 2 years of over 20 sessions, multiple sessions where the guy just would sit down and the Toen would speak for 2 hours, every type of Narishkeit, and it cost me almost $150,000 for a case that should have taken 3 hours. What are the Batei Dinim that you say, look, if it's not one of these 2 or 3 or 4 Batei Dinim, just don't go? Who are the good guys?
Who are of the ones that I come up with basically like this is the Beis Din Vad Hadin Vaira, which you had him on just a few weeks ago, Rabbi Khan in New City, New York.
Okay.
Based on the guidelines that they have, it should be very, very acceptable. I just wrote to them some things which I feel should be put into it. I didn't get a response yet.
Okay.
Then Shara Mishpat Rabbi Gestetne Mansi does not charge for any dentaris. He has an outside person that pays, and they don't allow any Toanim. And also the Beis Din of America. That would be the 3, first one that I would tell somebody to go to, unless you take like Moshe Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. I've asked him. I said with these Batei Din many years ago. I asked him, what do you do with that over here? He says you're going to get a very glatter psak if you take 3 business people that the people in their industry say that they're glatt. You go to them. It'll be 1, 2, 3, and you'll get a very glatte oiskalten al pi halacha, exactly what it is. With these other Batei Dinim, he understands what the problems are, and it's a problem. But the problems of all these Batei Dinim is the Toanim. That is where the problem is, and especially when you have this kind of Toyin, like this kind of Gershon, which is basically a viper, you got a problem. There was one of these. He was at a Torah over here. There was somebody not selling. They split the partnership, got split. They made it into multiple sessions until finally the Beis Din came up with, this is what the other guy has to go to pay out. They put the money in escrow, and then this Gershon puts a hold on the escrow money. He says 10 years ago, these people had a different kind of thing, and basically he's not letting any money release because of the... So the guy says, first of all, I don't have the evidence of the 10 years ago. The guy never money me. He had to go to court, which dragged out 1.5 years in court in order to get the money released because this Gershon didn't want to let it released. This couple that split up from that other partner on the end because of the pressure they went through, they both became druggies. They are now in rehab. This is just happened about 2-3 years ago, and they're in rehab now. They turned into druggies all because of this guy Gershon. And then with this guy,
So what would happen, Rabbi Shain? What would happen? You're a nitzvah, or you're and the other, or you're in a desire, and you find out the other fellow has taken this Gershon guy as his Toen. What would you do?
I would basically move right away to one of these other Batei Din that would not allow him over there, and end the story.
So basically, is it fair to say, tell me if this is correct, and I think this is an important thing to say, I think that you would agree, Rabbi Shain, that going to our koyes is very problematic. Is that fair? You would agree with that,
That's
right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But you would also say that since there is no licensing of Toanim, there is no bar association where a Toen who's a gangster, such as this Gershon who you say is a notorious gangster, there's no way to discipline them, right? So you would say that the if you want to both respect, not go to the Archaics, right? Because we want to respect Elam, but on the other hand, not to fall into the trap of all these sort of underworld Dintairas, Batei Dinim, etc. You would actually put into, you say, these are the only 3 Batei Dinim I'm going to. It's because they don't accept Toanim. And could you also put into, I will not sign it, and put into the Shtari Berurim that if any one of these Toanim, you give a list of 3 or 4 of them, because many of them could be very honest and Yirei Shamayim. I've dealt with, we've had on a number of Toanim who are well known to be Yirei Shamayim and Talmidei Chachamim, but if it's one of these X number of gangsters, the binding arbitration letter is null and void, and I reserve the right to go to court. Is that something that could be done?
Well, I beg to differ with you, Legabe certain Toanim what they are, and I'll tell you one very short story. There was a Yerusha in Brazil, about the $10 million Yerusha, that the Bechor and the other 3 brothers didn't get along. And they learned in Tosh. And one brother the Bechor went to the Tosh Rebbe, and he told him, I have a problem. All these Batei Dinim where I'm going over here in the metropolitan New York area, my brothers are buying off the Toen. They're paying him off, and he starts representing them instead of me. What should I do? I can't go. I can't take a Toen. And this was from the Erlich Toanim. The other brothers were buying him off. So he tells him, the Tosh Rebbe tells him, there's a Yid in Lakewood by the name of Yehuda Shain. They will not be able to buy him off. I don't know if he does the Torah or not, but tell him I'm asking him to do the Torah. So they came to me. I was already out of the field of doing the Toanim work, but if the Tosh Rebbe asked me to do it, I went. At the Torah, they had a Toen there, the other one, and the Toen complains to the Beis Din, why whatever Rabbi Shain says you accept carte blanche as the truth, and whatever I say you keep draining me a cup that it's this way, maybe this, bring proofs and everything else like it. So they told him, the Beis Din says very simple, Rabbi Shain is not really a Toen, he's a facilitator. and he's not going to lie, which he had many opportunities to lie for his tzad. But you people as Toanim, we know exactly what you are. It's hard to decipher when you're really saying the truth. And this was from the better Toanim. So that Toanim went and quit right then and there. He said, I'm not going to sit in a Beis Din that you're telling me that every single one of my statements is questionable if I'm saying the truth or not. But that is what it is. And I'm telling you it's from all these Toanim. If you happen to have some good thing about a Toanim and this and that, but in general, I got to put them all in the same packle. You don't go with a Toanim because all of the Toanim are one a little better, one a little worse, but everybody is out to drag out the time, strip everybody of money, will lie about anything under the sun in order to be able to win that case. So if they do allow Toanim, finished. Goodbye, Charlie. Not interested in going to this Beis Din at all.
Okay, now, Rabbi Shain, the people who do go to, let's say, the Batei Dinim that you would consider as respectable without Toanim, etc., do you find for the most part that people come away feeling that they got respect, they were listened to, and they're sort of satisfied that they got a fair hearing?
Most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, yes. I did get back certain complaints. They felt that the Beis Din didn't understand a certain part, whatever else it is. But in general, I know that when they go to the other Batei Dinim, I know what it's all about. But to hear, you're not always going to get that everybody's going to feel completely satisfied when they go to a Beis Din that they really got a fair shake. But at least if most of them are coming back that way, okay, that's part of it. When you go to court, you have the same kind of thing. They don't always feel that the court was right with what they ruled on, But you see, but in courts there's an appellate thing over here. By these Batei Dinim, basically they'll give you Bemed and Tuni, and in the one in Muncie does have an appellate thing which they do send it off to Eretz Yisroel to another Beis Din. So there is an appellate thing, an overview. By these other ones, you're locked in. There is no overview. There's nothing, and you're locked and you're cooked.
And do these other Batei Dinim that you say you're cooked in, do you have a right to ask for them to explain to you the psak? Will they give you the explanation?
No, in the Shtar Berurim, the arbitration agreement, you have no right to ask for absolutely nothing.
Wow.
And most of them don't take notes, don't take recordings, and they don't even want to allow you to record the session.
Wow. Well, Rabbi Shain, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, Koltov, bye.
Koltov. We have with us on the phone from New York, Rabbi Simcha Roth. He's one of the most respected Toen Rabbanis in America, and he has a very diverse background. He learned in Satma and in Beis Talmud. In Lakewood, he was a mashgiach in Chabad. So he really crosses almost the entire Fruma spectrum in America. He's a musmach from Beis Talmud. Welcome, Reb Simcha.
Shalom. Good morning, Reb Dovid.
So, Simcha, I see your smicha was from Rabbi Yisrael Perkovsky of Beis Talmud, who actually was my Masada Kiddushin.
Interesting.
And I'll share with you a beautiful story he told me. He said he was a bacha, an Alta Mir, in the Mir. He was an Alta Mir bacha, and he came back from Shanghai, and he was in his 40s, and he got married. And the mashgiach of the Mir was in America for 1 year, right? And he had never had the honor of bringing the mashgiach shalach manis because he was a bacha. So his first year, he's 45 or maybe 50 years old. He told his wife, the Rebbe Tendina, could you please make me a beautiful cake of my shalach manis to bring to the mashgiach? So he said his wife made him a beautiful shalach manis, and he brought it to the Mir on King's Highway, and Chatzkel was there in his room downstairs, the room, and he came in, and all the bachrim were standing by the door, and he brought him in. So he said he brought the shalach manis into Reb Chatzkel, and Reb Chatzkel opened up the cake. He opened it up, and he put his head in, and he gave it he scented it, and he said, Sigut. And he wished him a Freilich Purim, and he left. So he walked outside, and all the whole yeshiva, what did the mashgiach say? So he was so proud of himself. So he said, "Et gesagt, Sigut." He was like, so Reb Shmuel Brody was sitting over to Shmuel Biramel, but they both started laughing. They do verstehst nicht, they told him. If the mashgiach said Sigut, mit ein Zach bist du versichert. One thing you could be sure of, he won't eat from it. if it's good. he was so holy, Rav Chaskel. He said if he says that's good, his back never touched the back of a chair. He said, "As it gesagt that's good, but the shenish essen for that." Remember that story he told me. So let me ask you some questions. You're a Toen Rabbani now for 20 years.
Correct.
Now, the Rambam, the Rashi, Aruch HaShulchan, many say that Altia K'Orchei Hadayana means don't be somebody who teaches Tainus to the Beis Din, because it corrupts the Beis Din system. I mean, you know, you've been in many Dinei Torah where you see that the contortions that the Toanim go through to make a Baba Mises and Liggins and Ivus Hadin, and they say, we just don't want it. So how do you, I know you're a big Yerei Shamayim, you're famous to be one of the honest Toyin, how do you, justify your, and you're never supposed to get between a person's parnasa and Shulchan Aruch, but I'm sure you've thought of this. How do you see the whole concept of Al Tiyah K'Orchei Hadayanim when the Rishonim, as well as Poseik, many of the Poseikim are against it?
Okay, so if you don't mind, I mean, I appreciate the compliments, but I hope I could live up to the standards of what you asked, but still in all, I would not do something that I would believe is Keneged Halacha. And Dovid, if I may respectfully correct, you said a lot of things which I'd like to sort them out a little bit and put them in the right perspective. Because, you were talking about Ivus Hadin and about Beis Din and about Toanim and Torah, and making Baba Mises here and there. Al Tiyah K'Orchei Hadin, that, let's first isolate that part. Al Tiyah K'Orchei Hadin really has nothing to do with the Beis Din, fundamentally. It may be used, the word, sometimes. That is a din that a person should not get involved in other people's sichsuchim, in other people's disputes, because why choose? Why help a guy? Sometimes, if you were to go and to help a person bring a claim that he has no intention of bringing, you are a misavra rivloiloi, and that is dealt in the section of Shulchan Aruch where that is dealt as nehilchos harsha, actually, which has it then if you have done that and you are not makabel kinyan, if it's considered something because the Gemara says that's what it says in Masechta Shavuos, and right there, if you'll bear with me for one moment, and I'll take out the actual Marmakim in Shavuos. So it is. Rashi says so that's one thing, and Tosfos says that is only when you do it because you're a person that enjoys a fight, you're Gvar Alim, you're a Baltanas, but if you're helping a person actually protect his money, or we can go through very, very briefly the halach on that it completely does not apply. I mean, in the Gemara there are two classic examples. One of them, it was, I think, Rabbi Yochanan, who advised on how. Just give me a moment.
Gemara Ksubis Nun
Bais. There's one of them where Rabbi Yochanan advised to somehow make a price with the doctor, so it becomes a schum kotzuv, and the wife, the almana, would not be able to collect from the Ephraim as mezainas, but it would rather be classified as something that you only can collect from the ksuba, and that was advice. And the only reason Rabbi Yochanan did that, and he did it at first, he thought for a karav he should do it. Later on, an adam chashav not. And similarly, there was the story in Pei Heyom at Bais Din, where Reb Nachman suggested also Mechilus HaKsub in order so that the holder of the Ksuba should not be able to collect from the assets. Whatever in the Gemara is there. What I'm saying to you is that Altas Atzchem K'Orchei Hadayanim is not really a a process in Beis Din that is fundamentally, I'm not saying, but that it's used all the time, but that it talks to the standard that a person should not be misaref. Now, if a person, Baba Maises and Sheker, and these are not my words, but when you talk about Shkarim, Baba Maises and all that, Chas v'Shalom, that nobody should do that. The Baldin is not allowed to do that, and his representative is not allowed to do that. And that has nothing to do with the fact, somebody's going to point that there are Toanim that do that. But that's not. If that's not the issue. The issue here is whether you should get involved. So I will let you respond, but I'll soon show you under all the instances where the Tosis Yantiv says very clearly that today even by an Adam Choshev, but it's even a Midas Chasidus, there is no, when you're trying to help someone retrieve his money, the Be'er Heitev says that we're doing it today 100%, when you want to be in Hanem and Aschar, and I'll show you fundamentally that there's more benefit to it than the other side and the damage when it is not allowed. But I'll first let you continue the conversation.
Okay.
Because what you're saying has another issue, but the strict issue of Archa de Yonim refers to a person getting involved in another person's fight.
So here's the lashon of the Aruch HaShulchan on that halacha.
Yeah.
Yesh lo la'adam.
Where are you quoting from? I'll take it out.
Yud Zayin, Yud Gimel Tezvav. And this is how he explains the Rambam and Rashi on Archei Adam. Yesh lo la'adam. A person should refrain afilu k'she'enoi dayin lehisrachek atzmai, to distance himself liyos ka'orchei hadayanim, to be such as like what we would call attorneys today, tahainu sheyomoid le'echad mehabalei dinim taines, to teach one of the litigants arguments, the loimalei, to tell him titayin kach v'kach, claim so and so, and if he answers you like this, teach him, this is the response to it. In other words, the whole v'chein lahatim divrei echad me'avadim, to teach him how to articulate it in a better way. Lahadayin. He's quoting the Rambam and Rashi here. Afilu einim dvarim shel sheker, even if it's the truth. V'chein ein liyavetz li'echad me'balei dinim. Do not advise one of the litigants laseis davar beheter, to do something that's allowed kedei sheyiske bedin. Right? All these things. And the reason is, and he continues, he brings all these Gemaras, right? Then he says, the exception is if you're a relative, or if it's an Adam Chashifu in all way. So he does not say it's talking about a third party. He says, do not do it. It's a blanket statement. Don't become a lawyer in these cases. And that's how he's learning Pshat in the Gemara. That's how he's learning Pshat in the Rashi. That's how he's learning Pshat in the Rambam. And it seems to sort of, we just, and I think, Simcha, let me ask you a practical question. If you were a guy,
maybe we should answer on this before you go to the practical question.
Go ahead.
I think the Aruch HaShulchan, for even though the Rashi and the Rambam, there are differences how the Poseik can bring this out. But one thing let's first establish: this Aruch HaShulchan supports what I said.
Okay.
Not talking about a Beis Din process, interfering with the Beis Din process. This is talking only about one thing: that don't get involved into someone else's machloikas and ba'shaloitov of which I mentioned to you before. So I would just like to tell you, and I'll quote you some Poiskim clearly. He says himself in loy that it's kroivoi, the Adam Choshev. So that's now what does kroivoi mean?
But where does he say that? You're putting words.
Didn't you just say that at the end? Hold on.
No. But I'm not talking about this. But you said a minute ago he's not talking about in the Beis Din process.
Yes, loy Adam. He does not. One second. He's quoting Gemaras. And he's stating here nothing in terms of being in Beis Din, and over there, that's a whole different. Dovid, if you don't mind, we can walk through this, and I hope we have the time for it.
So, we do. We have time. Yeah.
There's another din in halacha, which we can talk soon in Simcha Yud Zayin, which deals with meturgaman, which deals with the Beis Din not hearing directly from the Baladin. This halacha of Orchei Adin, even though the Aruch HaShulchan did put it into Simcha Yud Zayin, this specifically has nothing. When the Eitzah was given to how the doctor should bill, and when the Eitzah was given by about Mechilas HaKsuba, this was not done in front of Beis Din. There's a case where there was an Eitzah given for a Huna to divorce his wife, so because he had no money, and to collect in order for him to be able to collect from his shver the ksuba, he was a guarantor on the ksuba.
Right, that's the
and the Gemara found, at the end they found out that he was a Cohen, so the Gemara says that you're not allowed to, you have to be moichel the ksuba, the arev, because of this kanonia. And the Gemara says, while we talk, maybe I'll remember where that Gemara is. And the Gemara, I think, says that he would do it shloi Beis Din. You see exactly you learn the Poseik on this. This particular issue has nothing to do. You could have been applied with being a Beis Din or out of Beis Din. This is saying basically, don't be a lawyer, don't be a Toanim, stay away from this.
You're referring to the Gemara.
I will say if it applies on that.
Wait, you're referring to the Gemara in Ksubas and Daf Pehei and Bais, right? We taught him to be Moicha Azla Achilta, that Gemara. But I'm just telling you, we're taking an Aruch HaShulchan who says don't do this, and we're putting in a star. You're saying it's outside of Beis Din. It's like, a Litvak was learning.
No, that's fine. We can talk about it. We should still talk. The Aruch HaShulchan has to be adhered to. Nobody says that. So let's.
But he doesn't say that it's outside of Beis Din. You're saying he's referring to outside of Beis Din.
Where does it say, Dovid? All these halachas has nothing to do. This archa adiyonim, this is yeshloi l'adam. This again. I didn't get an agenda exactly, and I can't tell you that I learned through the sugi yesterday. But archa adiyonim, you look through. I think it's either a borrowed term sometimes. It definitely refers a lot of times to the yonim themselves, that they shouldn't be archa adiyonim. That's definitely in the process of a Beis Din proceeding. But the general halacha, being meisa eitza in other people's nechasim, involving themselves, at teaching them or helping them, that, and we'll, if you don't mind, I'll just tell you where the whole point is where the answer to the whole point, even by profession, and why it's needed, we'll talk later. Because you read yourself from the Aruch HaShulchan that imhu karev lebaldin mutaloi lasses kain. If he's a karev, he's allowed to do it. And if it so says. There are a couple of things. I'll read to you, first of all, there's a Sefer Chafetz Chaim from Reb Chaim Pelagi. And he said he has a very interesting discussion about this issue, and all the halachas, l'maisa. And he says very clearly, he says, besides other pieces maybe that we'll quote later, but he says, "Lo dibru chachamim el b'hoive, the lekroivoi malamad lo tainus v'nois lo eitza." The chachamim usually you do this for a friend. Avul gam lerochek muter, you're allowed to do it even for somebody that's not close. V'afila midas chasidus lekes rach iser klau, lekes rach iser klau. Afila midas chasidus. And he quotes Kein Kosva Toisvis Yontiv, the Toisvis Yontiv. That Toisvis Yontiv is in Avos. If anyone cares to look it up, there's no midas chasidus even. But then there's another issue also, which the Be'er Heita brings back in Hilchas Harsha. If you give me a moment.
Respectfully, Reb Simcha.
Yeah. Okay.
You know that from halacha, there's always another shita. Reb Chaim Pelagi was a very big Sephardic gadol, right? Who, to my knowledge, in yeshiva world, is never quoted, right? He wrote many svarim on drush. He wrote hundreds drush svarim. You can always trot out some shita from 2,000 years of Talmudic Masu Matin who says something. The Aruch HaShulchan is one of the Poseik, the worst Poseik. And I know that the Toanim like to trot out this from Chaim Palaja, but it's like you could find a somebody for every sheet.
Fine, excuse me, Reb Dovid. You know what?
Right.
For the purpose of moving ahead, I'll accept what you said. For the purpose of moving ahead. So you know what? Let's go to the Poskim that are hopefully learned in all the yeshivas, those that learn Shulchan Aruch, and give me a minute. Well, let's move to the real place in Halacha where this issue is discussed. First on Hilchas Hashoah itself, I would direct your attention to the Bar Hetev. To the Bar Hetev, it's in Sif Tes. Sif Tes of Hilchas Hashoah says, and the whole issue, the problem is that it has to be b'fanav because ein chavim, whatever the halach is. But to our issue, narrowly to our issue, says the Bar Hetev in Sif Kot Chav Daled, imihu haba b'hashoah k'dei lehenes min haschar. Loi b'shvil almas, not because he likes to, he enjoys just getting involved and to bully around. Nered eine b'chlal v'sheloi toiv asa b'amav. V'chein parsha haminhag, v'chein parsha haminhag, quoting from the Knesset Agdoila. So, Reb Dovid, tell me, did I quote to you some Sfardische Godel?
No,
outside?
No, but
this is Hashoah, and it gets even better.
Rav Simcha, this is based on a Shulte Gibayrim is the first one to say if you makabel schar, it's different, right? So it's a Shulte Gibayrim. It's brought by Paiskim, but notwithstanding that, the Aruch HaShulchan as well as others do not hold of the Shulte Gibayrim.
I'm not so sure.
He's saying for money you could do it. Okay, so we found an exception.
I don't know. The Aruch HaShulchan doesn't. I have news for you. Yeah. Even where the Gemara is, let me show you. Even let's go back to Tosfos. So that definitely precedes all the already where we can classify them into a certain. The Gemara of Ashloite Vasabam, that's the Makoy, Rav Omer Zeh Haba B'Hashoah. So Tosfos says,
the Gemara in Shavuos.
Yeah. Right. It's hard to be interviewed by a person that really knows your way around, almost all over in Shas. Tosfos says here, Rav Omer Zeh Haba B'Hashoah. So Tosfos says, "Kisha oisa b'shvil shu alam ubaltainishem aber ariv loy loy." Aval, listen to these words. Kisha toirech lahevi chaveira ma'oisav she'ein chaveira yochel etroyach is mitzvah ka'avad mitzvah on v'ashel toiv b'amav. So now, what we're boiling down to is to try to interpret the intention why the person gets involved. Yes, I say that there are at times askanim. They don't even come to Beis Din necessary, and they have nothing interest in it. But it's for pastime. They get involved in other people's fights. They're prejudiced. They adopt one side. I think that's Ashet Loita Vasabam. Why are you getting involved? Why are you instigating? Why are you trying? Or if I were to be a Toen and I were to go over to a brother to a girl that's not ready to challenge Yerusha or anything else, and I say to her, you know what, I'll go in, for a contingency, we can talk, but I'm saying that would be Ashloit Avasab Amav, because as Rashi says, maybe the guy would be mefasher with him. Why are you building a machloikus? But to say that, again, we can start reading the Shulchan,
let me respond to the Tosfos. When Tosfos says that the din of Harshoah is somebody who's Eina Yachel Etroyach, the way I'm understanding the Tosfos means somebody says, listen, I can't go to court. I'm in a different city. I don't have the time. Could you represent me in court? Right? That's very reasonable. Shluchai shaladam kamaisai. With a harsha, you're empowered. You have legal empowerment. So Taisa says, Kishaina yachal in Troyach. There are people that have businesses. They can have 100 litigations ongoing. They can't be everywhere. They have to run their business. You send somebody a messenger. When Darach HaShulchan or is talking about Orchei Hadayanim, it's somebody comes to court. Even this guy who comes with the harsha, and then he says, "Listen, I want to have somebody who could argue my case better than me, who knows halacha better, clever." The guy coming with the harsha could hire an Orchei Hadayanim. So the Shulchan Aruch, the Rambam seems to saying, we want to hear directly from the litigants. We don't want to hear their words, fiddled with and thing, then clever. Taisus is talking about you can do the messenger to the court. That we agree with.
I beg you again, because I see you really know the sugya, and bear with me for a moment, because everything you said till you went in again to hear directly, you're going into a whole different area in halacha, and that's not Altas Yonim. Because what you're saying actually says in Shulchan Aruch, and I must compliment you for that, because in Hilchos Hashua it says, B'mad Devarim Amurim, give me a moment, that it's only Vasheloi Toi B'amav, V'yesham B'mad Devarim Amurim, the Beis Yosef says this, K'sham nitva tevei b'ir achas, av lema nitva b'ir achas, v'tevei b'ir acheres, hare ze oisa mitzvah. You say the literal, but I'm telling you in the Poskim, this is clearly not only because there's, first of all, let's sort it out again. If a person is there to be mavalbul, to be metashtish, to confuse, to intimidate, if that's what he's there for, then whether he's a Beis Din, whether he's a licensed lawyer, whether he is a Toen, or he is a friend that comes along to do that, that's I think the Shach says that can't mean that, because that's masericious. It says in Shulchan Aruch Klar that Beis Din is not allowed to lie. I mean, you would almost wonder why that has to say, but it does say that. However, a person halucha puts a very, very great emphasis that the Dayanim, or rather the Beis Din, get a proper opportunity to properly present their case, that the Dayanim have the proper knowledge, whether that knowledge is some halacha knowledge, but that you maybe can expect at least that's their area of expertise, but that they have at least the proper business knowledge, that they have the proper knowledge of law when that is applicable, and which is, in many, many cases, not going to get into the Dina de Malchusa and the Stimta and all the halachas, which so many dinim apply to that. So the overriding issue, besides, saying Toanim come in or lawyers come in to confuse, the overriding issue, and that the entire first few simanim of Shulchan Aruch and Choshen Mishpat is where it deals with Hilchos Hayanim, is to make sure that the Beis Din can properly present, that the Dayan gets the facts very, very clearly, that they are not intimidated, the Beis Dinim, and that is the overriding issue. I agree with you, but the only reason we only area where we have a disagreement. We're not. So I'm asking you. I'm going to take you to Hilchos Metorgaman, because there is the real answers to you, because the Shach addresses them. But first of all, where do we disagree?
We disagree with where...
No, because I'll tell you the truth. Dovid, you're very learned, and I have to tell you, I am impressed with your vast ability, Obviously, I don't think you sat for the last year to learn through all these sugyas, so I am very impressed with that. But can I say respectfully, and you said it in your questions, this comes along with a certain prejudice that the Toen because most of those that have issues with it, that the Toen, that's his job, to confuse, to scream, and maybe because somebody had once an experience, there are obstructionists in this world, there are lawyers, there are obstructionists, even within the entire court system, but they know how to take advantage of every loophole and every technicality, and obviously, and there are, by the way, Beis Din, there are obstructionists and do that very, very well.
Let me ask you two questions.
Yes.
You are often, I imagine, you've been asked to be a dayan. Is that fair to say?
I have been
a dayan. Have you been
Absolutely.
a dayan?
I serve as a dayan. I prefer.
Let me
prefer to be a dayan. Yes.
Let's say you were asked to be a dayan on a case, and you're the only dayan. They say we want one dayan, and you have a big litigation. Would you prefer to hear from the Beis Din, from the litigants themselves, and to question them themselves, or would you prefer if they were presented by Rabbi Spiegel, all the different? How would you prefer it?
Okay, perfect and excellent question. And let me not answer hypothetical. I was not a dayan yochid, but I sat as a neutral panelist, not as a boiver. I sat with 3 dayanim selected in a matter that involved close to $100 million. And I could tell you that all of us, the dayanim, very mainstream dayanim, one of them is a Rosh Beis Din, one of the major dayanim. He actually was presiding over it, and we were telling the parties to please bring representatives. And I don't want to even give a hint on what kind of a case it was, because, we live in a small community. But just to bring out the issues, what happens when there are no Toanim. And this we experienced. We wanted to get to the truth. We had no idea. The parties were both very sophisticated business people, but they were lacking the legal, the halachic sophistication to know and to properly define, even for themselves, the positions and the various transactions involving millions or tens of millions of dollars over a period of a couple of years, and which part was subject to interest. There's also a problem that when there's not a Toen and a litigant starts fumbling, the dayan not willingly becomes a Toen for him. And you'll ask any dayan.
Well, the Shulchan Aruch says it.
What?
The Shulchan Aruch says that if he brings the Lashon Rambam, but he has to very carefully.
Okay, that's where I wasn't going to go next. But I'm not talking.
But you're going too fast.
You asked me a practical question. I answered you a practical answer.
So let me respond. Okay.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with a $100 million case with multiple transactions, right? The most part, these transactions are done through attorneys. They're huge legal documents. They're incredibly complex, and the litigants themselves don't understand a lot of what the documents were, what all the clauses were, etc. So it makes sense to have the lawyers bring in, because they, in effect, are establishing the facts the way they occurred, and the litigant doesn't know. But now let me ask you a different case. That's a very complex case. A husband and a wife are killing each other. They want to get divorced. He could bring his Toen, she could bring her Toen. Which one would you rather have, with the Toanim, or would you rather hear the story without Toanim directly from the people?
Absolutely with Toanim.
Really?
But I would hope that they are Toanim. The ones, most of the Toanim, or many of them, it's very hard that know exactly what their mandate is, and instead of sitting and hearing screaming and everybody saying what kind of an animal the other person is and what they did to them and being totally emotional, there is a professional that has listened to that, has given them a dose, and that's what I do always in a matrimonial issue, in an interview. It's not only to hear the story, it's to really tell them, sort out the issues, what they can expect and what they can't expect. There are, a Beis Din doesn't even want to start at that point. There are women that walk in that understand that they're getting divorced, but they're still being fully supported. And by the way, in law, there is some, some truth to that. If the husband was the one, if it's a long marriage, and the husband was the one supporting, and they think there'll be no interference in sharing with the child issues. I'm just saying where you're talking, and there are men that walk in that are apps. They think that they're just, they were learning in Koilo and they never paid a cent. They didn't bring any money to the house, and suddenly, you know what? Yes, when you get divorced, the Shulchan Aruch opens up that a father is obligated to support the children, and there's no longer a wife that is ready to take that role. You know what? Does the business want to start from that starting point, screaming and yelling for 5 sessions before you even get to the point? Is a regular dayan even capable to deal with that?
Okay.
The Toanim are doing in that sense a huge, those that are doing their job right, is in their offices, they prepare the litigants. Yes, they sort it out with them, they tell them, they help them articulate. Now, if you have a Zablu, that's part of the problem a little bit with Zablu, that because it is a makeshift Beis Din, so you have the people are traveling because you assemble at a designated place, either in an office of a Toen or in a conference room or wherever or the Rosh Beis Din, if he has the facilities to accommodate that, whatever you have. So now it's a lot more prone to delays and to one dayan not arriving on time. So yes, in a Zablu still, most of the dayanim, the Beirim and the Shalish, unless they're coming from out of town, will not charge the traveling time. But it's for the Beis Din time, but it's a lot more prone for delays. And
so let's look. So would add in another 2,000 would go from 3,000 to 5,000.
Yeah, that's what you talk about.
And if it takes 2 yeshivas, would be $10,000. Now, how much would it?
The Toen is after the Toen, or there's a lawyer, or research, or sorting out documents, or whatever have you. That adds whatever the professional time goes into that.
What do you do when there are now a few bezos that don't allow Toanim and charge a flat fee? Do you think that's a good thing?
Dovid, I hope you'll give me a chance to learn with you with the SMA and all that. But the question is like this: don't ask me if I think it's a good thing. Absolutely think it's not a good thing, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. No, it may have been a good thing, but the bottom line is, first of all, a person dealing with even to every person has their own threshold, how much money and what's important to them. You want to make sure that the person adjudicating the matter is competent in understanding the Baladin and understanding the information that's given for them, has the proper halachic background. Today, most of the business in our modern world doesn't say exactly Shulchan Aruch. We're not selling any more oranges from A to B, and you just it's right there in front of you. So you have to have a koyach of comparing it and know where it fits. Many Dina Torah, you have to have a good knowledge of the law, understand the business practices, accounting practices. There's a lot that goes into it that no yeshiva really prepares anyone for that. So I'm more concerned that when a dayan is unwilling to accept that he could hear someone, that he wants to have in every court, in any venue, the judges, they could be on the highest level. They're presented with case law, they're presented with facts, because they don't know it all. And I'll tell you lahavdil, if I need to use that word. The very big dayanim, I'll give you I prefer to stay away from names, but those that are really the ones that, it takes to schedule an entire with them, months, because they're booked every day. They would turn around to the Toanim and say later, maybe you could find me some Aramakaimus on this issue. They know they don't have the chance.
But Rav Simcha, Rav Moshe did not accept Toanim, you know that?
Who?
Rav Moshe Feinstein, when he had a Beis Din.
I understand that he did not accept Toanim, and maybe because again, if somebody wanted to come to him, they had to come on his terms. Maybe he did not want to subject himself. I don't know. It's very hard to go back, 30, 40 years, when the kind of business and the kind of Dina Torah that were going on then. I'm 100% sure if you would have brought to Rav Moshe a stack of 100 pages of a shareholder agreement,
without a doubt.
Without a doubt that he would have recused himself. I'm not choishet him. I am very concerned with young light that do not have the shemesh, do not have the ability for anything, and when they're saying, don't teach me.
Without a doubt. So let me read to the next question, okay?
Go ahead.
To get to drive, you need a license, right?
Yeah.
To counsel somebody, even though there are some communities that don't believe so, you need to become either an LCSW or you have to become a psychologist. To practice medicine, you certainly need a license, right? But to be a dayan, anybody could, it's I think $4 to become a rabbi in the phone book. Costs you another $10 to hang up a sign outside your house. And it's for free to pick the name of the city, go to Europe, pick a name where you are now the Yaavetz in Varsha, any Chechanov, Chaka, whatever, and you become a Beis Din, right? So how does and I've been muzmin to these dayanim, where basically it's in somebody's basement, and he announced himself that he's a Beis Din and an Av Beis Din. I had a fellow who was mazmin me to a din Torah, and it came on the letterhead of Beis Din of Beis Yosef. So I called up Rabbi Yaakov and I said, I know you're the Beis Yosef Beis Din, but why didn't you sign it? He said, this person we threw out of our Beis Din. And now he goes ahead and he calls himself the Beis Yosef Beis Din, somebody alt. So I said, anybody today, not only could they, it's like China, you could, they have over there, people take company brands. Anybody can open up a name, steal a name, and there are, so how do we, as the listeners, know, it's just like, it's like the Wild West. Like, how do we deal with that?
Okay, so first of all, I want to make it clear, because I'm going to agree to it. Not only agree, I think that on this we're exactly on the same page, and that leads to the entire agenda of this discussion. But I first want to say that I do not agree with the characterization of Beis Yosef and of Rabbi Old, who is an Adam Choshev and a Talmud Chacham, and there is a system, and I'll respond now in general. So I don't want to talk about particular.
No, you misunderstood me. Beis Yosef is very legitimate. Beis Yosef is a very legitimate Beis Din, but this gentleman, they asked him to leave Beis Yosef, and he left, and he kept their own name. So there's now two Beis Yosef Beis Dins.
That is. I don't want to get into that honestly, because you're getting into a personal sichsuch. Obviously you understand that is something that. That has been an issue.
I'm not aware. I know
you're not, and I'm not getting in. I will tell you the truth, Rabbi Dovid. This is the first time I'm doing this type of an interview.
Okay.
Because I have great respect for you and for your professional. I always, turn down only for one reason, because I really I'm involved in a lot of things with a lot of people. In Yetz Hashem, if the Rebbeinu Shalom will give me the chus to write, what they call, my memoirs or whatever, we can talk about. Right now, I don't want to get into particulars, but I think you raised a tremendous issue, and it goes exactly back to why you need Toanim and why you need a Beis Din today. And Moshe says this in Halacha, but it's common sense, it's logic. A Beis Din has no koyach. And yes, there are an semblance of three people that put a sign up, or even one person and has three people to sign on and send hazmanas. They issue ikulim, they issue all kinds of things. These things they don't have an authority. Those that are respected, when they send, so they are, let's say, facilitators. That's what they are at the stage of and I have testified to judges to explain that to them in affidavit. Not the courts in New York, they're sophisticated and they know that. A Beis Din that has not been makubal we're not living today in a little town that either the government in Europe and Germany, whatever it was, or Tuvya, the board of the city, has appointed dayanim. That's not that's not our system. So, but we have, some of them have a little bit more background to do that because they are reputable organizations that have either koilelim or other rabbinical functions, but still in all, it's a non-binding, and they facilitate, and they issue sometimes. I don't want to get into that. That's a whole discussion by itself, what the value is, what they write in a Prieden Torah. But they have no samchut. And because you're right, today there's no Beis Din. So the only time when a Beis Din becomes an authoritative body that really can dictate to you what yes to do and what not to do is only when the parties accept the Beis Din halachically, which is by appearing before them with a Kabbalah Kinyan, that's also an area halacha, but the bottom line is by being makabel, this panel. And legally by signing a binding arbitration agreement, which CPLR 75, every democratic, every state, every country basically provides for ultimate dispute resolution, which is arbitration, and you get legal. And that's when the Beis Din becomes effectively empowered. So the answer to your question is like this. When you get a hazmana, you meaning anyone gets a hazmana, a normal established Beis Din, all they did is they acted, because they're the one that are going to facilitate the hazmana, the process of Beis Din. You have a broad range as a defendant and even as a claimant, by the way, to choose the Beis Din. You choose the Beis Din, you can give them, you can suggest other Batadin that you are comfortable with, that think that have the credentials to deal with this, or you can decide on a Zablu. And
how many can you choose one? Or you have to choose more than one?
Again, I can give you what the general process is.
Yeah, what is it? Let's say I get a hazmana. Can I say I want to go to the Machonei Roth, I want to go to Beis Yosef, or do you have to give them a choice of 2 or 3 Beis Dins? So
let me tell you, from a strict halachic point, the way today really you could say you want to go to Zablu. You want to go to Zablu, the Moshe says it, I think it's in Simon Mem Gimel of Chashmish Betalet, that even a Taveya could go to Zablu. Some didn't even send a Hazmana, most don't. But there are some that would send a Hazmana le Zablu. So that the answer to your question is that strictly halachically, you can answer, I want to go to Zablu. And you pick your buyer, the other guy picks their buyer.
Could you say you want to go to a specific Beis Din?
The what?
Could you say you want to go to a specific Beis Din? I want to go to the Machonei Roth. I'm giving you one Beis Din. Can you do that or no?
We'll talk about that in a moment. The answer is really you can't. No. Because from the eyes of halacha, Mechalei Roth is no different from the eyes of halacha. They're a very prominent Beis Din with very chashuv dayanim. But from a legal halachic point, before you were makabel them, they're like saying, I'm going. You assemble 3 of your friends, and I'm going to go to them. You down in the shul, you have 3 dayanim. They don't have more be'erech. Whatever I'm saying is not 100%. I don't want the reader. I know that there are such, but I have written on this and argued on this, and I've been recently.
Simcha, can I change the topic for a minute? Let me ask you. If you had to, you have 20 years of experience. You're very highly respected as an Adam Yasher, as a big Talmud Chacham. If you had to say, here are one or two things, if I had a magic wand, I would wave it, I would change in the Beis Din system, in the litigation system in Klal Yisrael, what would they be?
Well, is this the last question? Because I want to have an opportunity still to give you the two halachas that I wanted to show.
So go to your halachas, and we'll put this. We'll move this question afterwards. Go ahead, but continue the list.
Okay, good. So I want to. If we're getting, am I assuming that we're getting to the end of this interview?
Yeah. You have another, but you could speak. Go ahead, Rabbi.
Okay. So let me tell you. First of all, as you said before, I told you that the overriding issue is that the Beis Din is treated properly, and I think you quoted. I just want to verbatim quote because the Mechaber in Sif Tes quotes the Rambam that you referenced before, that the Ra Adayin Zechus LeEchad Mehem uBeis Din Mevakesh Amra. He wants to express it. He wants to express himself. But he's an hypocrite. Mit der Chem hakas nestalf memene nishtabish meser harei ze mutter le sade lavino tchilos hador.
You skipped the word. Harei ze mutter le sade ma'at. A little bit.
Doesn't say ma'at. I'm reading
it. Rambam.
Do me a favor. Dovid, the Rambam was not Zoiche. He was Zoiche, but that he wanted that should be the Shulchan Aruch. It had to wait till the Beis Yosef came around, and that was the trouble by all of Klal Yisrael.
Okay, the Shulchan Aruch
and he didn't quote the word Ma'at. It says Lavina Mishum Psach Pichel Ilam. That's what he does say.
I agree. I'm only pointing out the Rambam put in Ma'at and the Shulchan Aruch took it out. Very interesting.
Okay, you know what? Yeah. This is obviously maybe if you want to give me a specific list of issues, and we can talk in learning and between us or on the air, that's fine. But,
okay.
So I don't want to leave any impression, because what I told you in the beginning of this discussion, that Archei Dionim is a word, it's a term used, but not so properly used from a strict halacha point, because that has to do with as I said before, the main issue of having an interpreter, of having somebody there in the Beis Din system. The main, where that is discussed in Siman Yud Zayin, Sivav, where it says, Lo Yadayin Shemer Mepiyam Torgaman, Vima Makabel Shoino Shoetanasayim, whatever, that's the halach. I want to refer to the actual Sma. I am the Prisha Shedikdakti Miloshna Rambam, Shegam im Adayin Ein Tzorch L'Shom Torgaman. See, the Toen is not there because the Dayan needs the Meturgaman. And he can respond also, because that's in the Shain, that's what the discussion. Raksha Baladin Roitzim Lahamed Meturgaman. Shiyamlitz Devreim Ba'oznai Hadin. Here he adds the words la'acha shetani hem ba'atzma lifnei hadayanim. They want to put up a representative. It's mutter. So that's one thing he says, that you can always have a Toen. V'ayim ashikosav oid l'chaluk by noisen haBeis Din koyach reshus la'meturgaman. If the Beis Din is the one that appoints him, the mechshav he Beis Din, then he's considered the Beis Din. The Sma. I'm reading the Sma. The mutter. Then it's clear mutter. So he says that if I come in, I argue for the Beis Din, I'm just around and he never told me, asked me to do it, then not. But if he's asking me, then I become the Beis Din. This is all referring to a Gemara which says that there were two loyazim, that Gemara Makkas, but I don't have it now in front of me. The Hanelayazi, and the Gemara says that Adam, really it's Adam, and the Poskim eventually say that it's Beis Din also, that you have to hear from the Adam alone. So the Gemara answers that the Beis Din needed it to respond to the Adam. So Mamela, because the Beis Din needs it, that's why you're allowed to have it. But now, and on this, the parsha, it's interesting to look through there, the parsha, but he says, "V'ayim b'parsha shediktaktim loshna Rambam, shegam adayin ain't tzorich l'shom turguman," like the Gemara answers. Shedei gam kaleheshe b'toy. So according to the simple Gemara Makkas of Hanelo Yazi, you wouldn't be entitled. Rak shebal adin roitz lahamet meturgum sheyamel zevreim ba'os nahadayin la'achar shet'ane hen ba'atzman lifnei hadayonim is mutter. That's one thing. I mashe kosev oid lachalek, mashe ksafti oid lachalek. They noise na den koich for the shus la maturgumen the mechshvi balden the mutter. When I appear, I am like a balden. Now comes the most important part.
Yes.
And I'm again. The listener should not, shouldn't lose track that we are reading verbatim a sma. Uma shebizman hazeh nahagen luden lo'azim al daimosh shalahem, that they always use it. Hu mipnei shekol shebo loden lifnei dayonim kavum havalei kekiblu alein loden kain. When you enter in, that there is an inherent acceptance of this system, and there's a reason for it. And there's no why is there? It's what I think we have very thoroughly discussed. It's true that there are some Toanim or some obstructionists, not Toanim, anyone, as I said before, until Mashiach will come and we will gather under a real imposed leadership, there are a lot of limitations. There are things that I was recently asked by. It happened actually twice. A Gvul that's supporting a Beis Din. He asked me this question: what can I do to better my Beis Din? I said, I think to have a good attorney on the Beis Din staff, so that, even if people can't afford bringing in attorneys and then the Dayanim have to hire an independent, it would not the spot of the panel, but just on the level of the Beis Din to understand. Batei Din, sometimes, they issue, let's say if they issue an ikul, a secretary in a Beis Din, which is not binding, but sometimes very damaging, and there's no consequences. If there would be probably a good attorney that would be properly familiar, that probably would be helpful. But again, it's not happening because it may happen in one of two Batei Din, but nobody has to agree to deal with them. That's the issue. Because there is no jurisdiction, there is no. But I can't think right now. It would be nice if in some issue there could be more discipline, more, and some it depends on individual Rosh Beis Din.
Let me ask you an unfair question, and I don't know if you in outside the din of Elu Mishpatim Ashetasim Lefneim Rashis V'Lo Lefnei Akom, right? Mm-hmm. Do you find the outcome in a Beis Din or a court system? How would you compare the two outcomes over over 100 cases?
Absolutely, by and large, the Beis Din system is quicker and better, because that the court system is an adversarial proceeding. You can be hackling around and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a technicality or not meeting a certain timeline or whatever, that statutes and all kinds of issues. A Beis Din is more of a truth finding system, and the facts show for it that over the years, as our community is developing and is big, the spectrum of people that are coming to our Dina Torah really are so wide range, even from, I would say, the far modern Orthodox. And, with all the complaints, and yes, sometimes there's language used that in a courtroom you couldn't do, but by and large, it's things do get settled, and there's room for pshara. You're not always 100% right or 100% wrong, and we have to start applying the halachic tools in whose favor there is room to split it somewhere. So I would tell you all in all, and I'm not saying what I think. Obviously, I work and then I operate in this system, but I can tell you that most of my clients, there are frustrations, but most of my clients, and hopefully I try to give them a realistic view of what's going to happen in a Beis Din, they come back again, and they don't want to sit and in courtrooms which takes years and gets nowhere in our system of justice.
Rabbi Roth, thank you very much. It's an honor to have you with us.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi Dovid.
We have on the phone with us from Eretz Yisroel, Rabbi Tuvya Stern, who's a prominent Toen Rabbani. He's a Toen. He's also an attorney, and his expertise is matrimonial, Dinei Torah, family court, etc. He's a Talmud of the Mir. Welcome, Reb Tuvya.
Happy to be on the show with you.
Okay, so here's my question. The Gemara in Ksubis and Daf Nun Beis speaks negatively about the concept of Batei Din, of a Beis Din allowing, Orchei Hadayanim. And Rashi explains what's an Orchei Hadayanim, where one of the Balei Dinim, one of the litigants, has basically a lawyer in front of him, and Rashi says Mikri Orchei Hadayanim, and because Rashi says She'orech es Hadayanim lahapich lahem latevasei shel zeh, and Rishonim, it seems, both in Rashi and the Rambam, that the reason for this is because it, when you, I had maybe, I'll tell you an interesting story. Our Shabbos is in my house is always a big affair. We have many people and a lot of discussion and debate about ideas. And I had one of the most prominent lawyers in the tri-state area came for Shabbos. And he's not religious. And we started talking about, do lawyers distort the law? And this guy is in his 70s, and he's a famous name in law. And he said, all litigation in the United States is just an act. It's a show. It's people lying. The best trained lawyers are the best trained liars, and it's about winning at all costs. And his wife looked at him, and she said to him, that's not true. I've heard. And he snapped. He says, what are you telling me it's not true? I'm doing this for 50 years. It's just lies and distortions. And they actually got into a fight about it by the table, and it was a little embarrassing. But it was hearing this from a famous litigator. It was so startling. And that's really what Chazal say about Orchei Hadayanim, right? And the Rambam in the Pirush HaMishnah says, even if you know that your party is an ashuk, in other words, it's being discriminated against, it's being stolen from, he says, I still don't want Orchei Hadayanim, and the Rambam seems to imply because at the end of the day, it distorts Dinei Torah. So my question to you, in your experience as a dayan, as a Toanim, have you seen where Toanim get up and it's just win at all costs, and they take the tinus and they twist them this way and they twist them that way, whoever you're representing, and your party is staring at the other Toanim and saying, this is just all lies. But what could they do? They have a really skilled actor on the other side. Have you had such an experience?
I mean, I shouldn't say had. It implies it happened one time. It happens all the time. What you're describing definitely fits what I would call the stereotypical lawyer, especially in the area of matrimony or divorce law. That's like the stereotypical divorce lawyer. They just come in and give out a litany of lies against the other side. And yes, that stereotype I do experience. I'm not going to say on a daily basis, but quite often. quite often.
And I'll give you an example.
Let me just say this. You know what I'm saying.
But in America, I'll give you an example. It's very common in a divorce, and from what I've heard from Toanim, that the first thing is the woman says the child is molesting the kid. The father is molesting the kids. I've seen this. The father is 28. I just saw this in a case in Lakewood. The baby is 3 months old, and he's sexually molesting his 3-month-old daughter. It's so bizarre and so beyond that, and it's accepted. And so my question to you is, do you understand then the rationale of Chazal, as well as the Rishonim, about saying, look, just bring the litigants in front of us without all the middle people, and there's a much better chance we'll get to the truth. Do you understand the Gemara, the Rashi, the Rambam, etc.?
Well, there's a lot of points to that question. Let's start with the halachic sources. The whole topic of whether or not you're allowed to have any kind of representation in the Beis Din, that's been dealt with through the Ephraim. I mean, there's plenty of tshuvas and articles, and I refer to the Sefer of Shochatman on the procedure in Beis Din. He talks extensively about this, and the bottom line is we have representation in Beis Din. Why exactly it's mutter is not exactly clear, but it's the minhag of Beis Din to allow it. So that's on the halachic level. Now,
Rabbi Stern, I think we're giving very short shift to what is really, as recently as the Aruch HaShulchan, which when I grew up, my father was a Rav, of blessed memory, right? Even more than the Mishnah Berurah, he was seen sort of as like the defining Poseik, he as a conclusive. He takes, and he writes in Siman Yud Zayin very clearly that we should not allow Orchei Dinim, right? He says this is exact lashon. Yesh Adam lisrachik atzmei milias ka'orchei hadayanim. You should prevent being like one of those to teach your baldin tainis how to argue, and to tell them titzain kach v'kach. The total.
Sure, no, I mean that's.
And if he tells you like this, answer him like this, and then to give meaning, he brings from Rashi, afilu einim dvarim shel sheker. You're not allowed to. He says ein Yaavetz le'echad me'balei dinim lasis davar beheta. Don't teach them the loopholes. Don't teach them the tricks.
Yeah.
Now, this
there are
serious stuff. This is serious stuff.
So on the halachic level, first of all, there are other sources. There's plenty of other discussions, even in the Gemara, about whether you're giving legal advice. And I want to point out to you.
But wait, you said Tzachal Tisalim is by a cousin.
One second.
Okay.
I'm saying so there are parameters of it, and based on those parameters, the Achronim have come with been matzdik the custom of allowing time of business. But I want to point something out to you. The Aruch HaShulchan you mentioned didn't talk about what I would call a barrister or a litigator. They're talking about a solicitor, and there's someone who's preparing the case for trial. So even if we would, for example, let's imagine today, we just say, forget it, there's no more Toanim and Beis Din, the litigants have to come without any representation. But if they're going to have someone behind the scenes preparing them, then on a practical level, it's not going to work. So now, but I'm going to get to the more substantial part of the question. You asked me a practical question, and I think on halachic issues, you got to ask the people who make these, make the rulings in halacha, which are the Rabbanim, and the Poseik and the Dayanim who open Beis Din, who sit on Beis Din and allow the custom. Then that's on the halachic issue. By the way, and one more point on the halachic issue in Israel, the Rabbanut HaRashit, when they established when they established the system of Beis Din in Israel, the Farish allowed people to come with a representation through a takana. So that takana was always going on whatever halachas there were before. Through takana they allowed it. In the same way they allowed it Yerur, they allowed appeal. They created an appeal system which was controversial at the time, but they established these things through a special takana, which was done through a whole procedure. And in Israel, there's less of a halachic issue in terms of having a representation, let's say, in Chutzlaretz, where the Kehilas didn't necessarily make takanas. There might have been certain Kehilas that did allow takanas to allow time, but okay, on the practical level, you asked which leads to to bring the truth, bring out the truth? Which system is better? Just having the litigants or just having the Toanim? And specifically, the example you gave of the abuse allegations, that's a perfect example of where actually it could be very useful to have attorneys there. Why? Because the attorneys or the Toanim, if they're scrupulous, okay, act as the gatekeepers, right? The court in America, and Israel, they have the same expression. They consider attorney an officer of the court, which means they have a duty not to support perjury, not to present false evidence, etc. And part of their job is also to filter the case, to make sure that they take out most of the irrelevant information and the incorrect information and bring only the important information as they see it to the Dayanim. Now, so let's say you have the specific example you mentioned. A person comes with an abuse allegation, all right? That person is going to make the abuse allegation with or without a tie-in. They're going to do it on their own. They went on the internet. They went on forums. They spoke with their friends, that said, oh, yeah, I was able to accomplish what I accomplished by making up an allegation, and the police are ready to hear. They don't need a lawyer for that, right? But where the lawyer can help on both sides, okay, is either preventing such a litigant from making such a claim, okay, if it's false, and defending the other side if the claim comes in. And I can tell you how many clients I've had, and I represent, men and women, plenty and plenty of clients, okay, that if they did not have a representative, they would have either found themselves making a false allegation, by the way, even unwittingly, okay? They wouldn't even realize they're making a false allegation. They might have exaggerated something, they might have misinterpreted something, okay? Or on the other side, they might have found themselves in jail because they didn't properly protect themselves from a false allegation. So if you go back to your case, you're looking at it from the perspective of the person making the allegation, but how about the perspective of the person who has to, deal with the false allegation? They're going to walk into the Beis Din. The Beis Din will see a woman. Why should she make up a story, right? We should, who makes up stories, right? So the Toen helps them prepare the case, helps them prepare the evidence, helps them show, well, how can you make such an allegation when the day later you sent me an email, can you take care of the case? And that's a classic example of how I disprove these types of things. I get the correspondent to say, if it's really true that you felt that that there's serious abuse, why in the world would you send over the kids for babysitting, when you claim the person's an abusive person? No. So
Rabbi Stern, let me ask you a question. Let's look at a hypothetical case. Two 10-year-olds get into an argument, and you want to know the truth. You could interview the two 10-year-olds in front of you and ask them direct questions, or you could interview their lawyers. Where do you think you're going to get closer to the truth?
With 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
With 10-year-olds, probably by interviewing them themselves. With adults by themselves as an independent third party, very hard. It's very hard to get to the truth. The truth.
You don't think you'll get closer to the truth by questioning the person themselves rather than questioning their highly trained, skilled attorneys or Toanim who know every dodge, every trick, have been in 100 litigations and know how the rabbi asks and what to avoid. I mean, you don't think you'll get closer to the truth by speaking to the man or woman themselves? It just seems preposterous.
The answer is yes, it's important for them to speak with them first, and actually that brings me back to the takanot in Israel that they instituted for the Beis Din. One of the takanot they did is, while they allowed representation in the Beis Din, they allowed it clearly, and not only that, it's a right. Okay, the Beis Din has a right also to basically throw out the lawyer if they find it causing problems, but you do have a right to bring in some kind of representation. At the same time, they made a very interesting takana. And the Beis Din didn't try to follow it. Most of the time they follow it, which is that when you come in for a case, especially the first time when you're first presenting your case, first they hear from the litigants. In court, in Israel, and the same is true in the U.S., the judge wants to hear from the lawyers. They don't want to hear from the parties. Okay? The Beis Din in Israel will always hear, not from the Toanim. They're always going to tell the person, let's say the husband is Tuvya get, the wife's Tuvya get. They'll ask them, what are the reasons you want a divorce? What's the background here? And they hear directly from the litigant. Actually, I have a friend of mine, colleague, a lawyer, not religious, but he appears plenty in the Beis Din, and he actually said that he felt that it was much more effective what they do in the Beis Din, Davka for the reason you mentioned, that they get to the truth by hearing the litigant first. Now, that being said, while it's one thing to have the litigant there and being cross-examined and directly by the Dayanim, and not having the lawyer interfere and do whatever kinds of tricks that the litigant doesn't want to do. At the same time, that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing, and it doesn't help get to Be'er MS by having a lawyer there. So there's sort of a balance. On the one hand, to have a representation there to make sure that the client doesn't get railroaded, then it can be railroaded, right? Or on the other hand, to present the case properly, to get the truth, out, right? On the other hand, to make sure that it doesn't subvert, that the representation doesn't subvert the process of getting the truth. They have a delicate balance there. They have, and they've sort of accomplished that here in Israel in the Beis Din by having initially that the case has to be heard first from the client to tell a story. It's a joke, they say, but I think it happened many times. I've seen things similar to this, that a Sephardi woman came to the Beis Din, and the Dayanim say, well, why do you want to get divorced? So she says to the Dayanim, Mo'es alai. Okay, now what was the joke? Any Sephardi woman would normally, if she really meant to say Mo'es alai, and naturally, she would have said Ma'is alai, and then she would have said with a Sephardi accent. But she said Mo'es alai because her Toen, who was an Ashkenazi, made sure to teach her to say Mo'es alai. The Dayanim figured out what was going on and realized that the Toen was behind it and there was no basis for it. So as long as the Dayanim are able to reach directly out to the parties and they're able to ask them questions, right? And the lawyer can't stop them asking questions, which, by the way, is true in Israel. And then a lawyer can never stop, or time can never stop the Dayanim from asking a question to a party. Okay, as long as you allow that direct access as well in parallel, I think you got your balance. I think you'll have your thing. And I think that having a lawyer there, preparing the case, and being there, from my experience, and what the kinds of evidence I brought out that if my client was there, it just would never have come out. Cross-examination. I've cross-examined many people. I know how to cross-examine. Okay, my clients don't know how to cross-examine. Plus, they're emotionally involved enough with their spouses that they're not able to cross-examine, or they're focused on the wrong things. One of the things I say about the function of a lawyer or a Toen is, in my view, again, there are people out there that what you call the stereotypical ones that will lie and cheat and deceive and falsify and stuff like that. I'm talking about from my perspective how I look at things, which is that there's a picture, and I see a large picture going on. There's a lot going on in that picture, right? There's it could be 20 years of marriage with a bunch of kids and a lot of money there, right? Where does the focus have to be? Where do you want to put the focus on? Why? Because sometimes you put the focus on the wrong thing, you come out with you come out basically with something that's not true. The classic example they always give is, the wife says that the husband hit her, right? So they ask the husband, is it true? Yeah, he hit her. Yeah, but take a step back. Well, what was the reason that he hit her? Well, it was in self-defense. The wife had hit him before, and he was just defending himself. Right? That's the kind of thing that comes up a lot. That's where it's a question of making sure you get the broad focus and making sure that you, as a lawyer, when to zoom in and to zoom out. To falsify, not to manipulate. That's not the purpose of a lawyer. But to put the focus on the right way, and I don't think it's just semantics. I think that there's actually a difference. There's a huge difference between the kind of lawyers who engage in zooming and zooming out, okay, and the kinds of lawyers who actually go ahead and falsify. And I think in the field also everyone like within the world of lawyers and everyone and the Toanim, we know which ones do which we want. Do which are the kind that tend to try to engage in demagoguery, and which are there to to do with the best.
What percentage, Rabbi Stern? What percentage would you say of the Toanim engage in demagoguery? And because I've been to a few DNA Torah, and I have to tell you, I would say it's 75% of them. I'm curious, what's your opinion?
Okay, so let's make a little bit of a chiluk between Eretz Yisroel and America, right? I'm not going to give up in other countries because you don't really have that many Toanim in other countries. Okay, in Eretz Yisroel, all Toanim are licensed, okay? At least the ones who appear in the Beis Din, in the government Beis Din. The ones who appear in private Beis Din are officially supposed to be licensed. They're actually supposed to be lawyers. You're not officially allowed to go to a Torah in Israel unless you're a lawyer, but somehow it slips under the radar screen. They don't check it out. Okay, so let's say in Eretz Yisroel, okay, I would say among the Toanim here, in the government Bate Din and the lawyers here, those classical, stereotypical, manipulative, I would say it's more like 30 to 40%. I wouldn't say it's 75%. In the private,
what about in the private Bate Din, and what is it?
So, and the private Bate Din, believe it or not, in Eretz Yisroel, there's a lot of serious type people over there, and I find that they actually, a number of them actually function as dayanim as well, right? They're not, and I don't know, I wouldn't say it's 75%. I would say it's a lot less than that.
What would you say? I'm curious. What would you say?
I don't want to start giving numbers. They're going to start, getting, phone calls from my colleagues saying, but it's not. I would say those types of people are manipulating and deceiving and whatever. Well, again, there's also different levels. To falsify, falsify.
I don't want to say
very few will falsify.
I'm not talking about falsifying. I'm saying we'll have a win at every. Their goal is just to win.
Win at all costs. Not that much, and I'll explain you why. Okay. And there's a huge difference between Eretz Yisroel and America on this point. Din Torah is in America, we could be talking about $10 million easily, right? We're talking, there are routinely in Zablo or Bate Din in America, Din Torah is upwards of $10 million, even $100 million, right? People are doing real estate deals. It's all between, Hamish mentioned, where it's not between, with Cohen money. 100% you could have, these kinds of, very common you have these types of Din Torahs with a lot at stake. In Eretz Yisrael, most Din Torahs are about small amounts of money, okay? Very rarely is it ever, with the exception of divorce litigation, very, very little is that much writing on it. I don't find that the win at all stakes. I don't find there that many out there. That'll be, that'll be, more in the divorce. You'll find that more in the divorce litigation than in the private litigation. I know what you're talking about in America. I agree with you, and I have contact with a lot of Toen in a lot of cases in America. I see a lot of that. I see a lot of how do I say this? At best demagoguery, at worst deception, and with a 75%, I don't know, but there's definitely a large number of unscrupulous actors in the business. I mean, there's, put it this way: some of these people have no conscience at all. Some of them have a conscience, but it'll take them a while to get to that. Like their moral compass till it gets calibrated. You know what I mean? It might be like a year into the Din Torah, and they realize, oh wait, I did something wrong. But I'll point something out to you, and this is very important. We have an expression: show me the lawyer, I'll show you the client. Right? It's an expression that says that if you want to see what a client's like, look at the kind of lawyer they take. And that which basically means that if you're going to have a psychopathic type client, right, the kind that you're saying will make up a story about sexual abuse, right? In my mind, any mother who makes up a sexual abuse claim in a custody case has psychopathic tendencies, because it shows that they don't care about law, they don't care about rules. They're just, it's a serious problem. Now, they're going to find that lawyer that's going to be like that, right? So in any system, however we're going to construct a system, right, there's always going to be that way. And to put the blame on the Toanim and not the blame on the person, is it divrei harav, divrei hatalmud? Is it that kind of a thing? I don't know. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say in shlich v'dvar, and I can't blame the lawyer. But I can't put all the blame. At the same time, I can't put all the blame on the lawyers for this. When in the end of the day, it's coming from the clients, right? The clients are the ones asking.
So Rabbi Stern, let me jump. So in America, you say the system is much worse, right? So
I believe so. By the way, it's not regulated. There's zero regulation for Toanim.
So let me ask you a question then. You're in America. Somebody's asking you to do it entire by one of these private Bate Dinim, and you know that the Toanim are unlicensed. They could basically say whatever they want. Additionally, the Bate Din let them go as long as they want. They never interrupt them. They say, and you say, look, it's just a corrupt system. I'm going to go to court. What's your attitude towards that? I want an honest judge, and I want an honest lawyer. Even though my lawyer said they're all liars, but I want somebody who at least his license, if he's caught under perjury, could lose his license. At least there's some element. How would you respond to somebody who takes that position?
Okay, so here's the problem with it. The problem with it is that go and look at all the grievances filed with the bar associations. How many lawyers have been disbarred for making a false claim, a knowingly false claim, in court? Okay, maybe zero. the lawyers are generally disbarred for client trust funds, misappropriation of client trust funds, or doing some other kind of crime, like federal type crime, right? Or felony, a state felony. They're not going to be getting a traffic ticket. You won't get disbarred, but for cheating on your taxes, you'll get disbarred. Okay. I've never seen, I've heard of any lawyer, and I check up. I'm always, I get all the updates from the New York State Bar Association, and I follow all the legal news.
You're saying a license is not a deterrent from keeping people from perjuring, etc.
It's complicated because here's what it is. It's not that the punishment exists, and unfortunately, it's not meted out enough. But what is true is that when you have the system, when you have the licensing, and you do put the grievance in, for the lawyer, it's a pain in the neck. It's a real pain in the neck. In other words, you have to deal with it. You have to write a response, and it could be as frivolous as the claim might have been. You have to sit there, dealing with the bar association. You have to answer within 7 days. There's a whole process which is a real pain in the neck, and that actually is the deterrent. It's not the punishment itself, but having to deal with, and you can't bill anyone for that. Let's
go back to my question. Rabbi Stern, let's say you're living in America, you have a shoe store, somebody takes you to a din Torah, to one of these, and there are so many of these sort of private, unregulated Batei Din. You get invited to they're all unregulated, to an unlicensed
on them. Okay.
So what do you tell your wife? You say, okay, I'm going to Beis Din X, this so-and-so Beis Din, or I'm just saying, look, I'm just not going to do it because I'm not going to. It's just a charade. It's a charade. It's who could lie to Beth, or do I say no? I'm going to the din. How would you respond?
So first of all, the other thing is having realistic expectations of what goes on in court. Now, you had mentioned the show that you said you hosted this attorney. You said that the whole system is a show and it's fake, and that's for sure true. But besides that, look at the costs involved, and this is very important. The amount, with all of my problems with the Toanim and which are admittedly are true, like you mentioned, I said there are definitely issues out there. But overall, think about what it costs to run a case in court, right? You're talking about in Manhattan, lawyers are billing $1,000 an hour, all right? So get a lawyer outside of Manhattan, right? They're going to bill you $700, $500 an hour. I was looking for a client of mine. He needed a lawyer in Wisconsin, okay? Talk about out of town, right? The lawyer wanted $750 an hour plus initial retainer of $10,000. He didn't have the money for that, okay? And that should go to court. The advantage of Batei Din is at the end of the day, with whatever. First of all, the prices are a lot cheaper, and also remember that you can come to some kind of terms usually about which sort of Beis Din you're going to go to. And there are Batei Din that are good. There are Batei Din that are going to in America, and I've had experience with them that are Yashar, and they're gonna, listen.
And could you share with us which Batei Dinim you think are good?
I don't want to get on the air and start saying that for many obvious reasons, but I can tell you from experience.
No, but we have a lot of people who really want to know Lamaisa. This is about, on our program we talk a lot halacha Lamaisa. Where would you say, look, if you're invited, say, look, I'll go to so and so. Let's your average listener does not know this area, and then they're going to get invited to a Mickey Mouse Beis Din in front of an unlicensed Toen. You share with us. You're knowledgeable. Where should they say? I'll go.
I'll start off. Let me start off with the new trend, okay? And we'll see if this trend picks up and gets anywhere. And I'm starting with this Beis Din Dafka because it's a very different Beis Din than all the other Batei Din that have been set up in America, and that's the Beis Din in New City. It's a very different kind of setup. They dafka do not allow Toanim, okay, which kind of makes it controversial, which is sort of a strange thing. Why is it controversial not to allow people who don't have a license? But it is controversial because they're doing something different. They're doing whatever. There's a lot of advantages of the way it's set up in terms of the formality of it and the they have an in-house lawyer in the Beis Din, which is a huge thing, right? Because to make sure that the procedure of the Beis Din is in accordance with U.S. arbitration law. There's a lot of rules of how arbitration has to work and how the ruling can be valid. And just what you want is you'll go to a Beis Din, you'll spend all this money on Toanim and countless hours in Beis Din only to get a psak that's invalid. There was a story that came out a few years ago. They had this din Torah, and the court ruled that they vacated. Wait, listen, we got to hear this. The court vacated the din Torah because the meetings were held on Sundays. they actually had to change the law in New York to allow Din Torahs on Sundays because technically there was a problem with it. Now, so they're doing a new thing. I like what they're doing. I've heard a lot of good things in terms of success and making sure that their rulings are not vacated and that are upheld, and in terms of the consistency in the procedure. Now, there are plenty of other Bais Din that allow Toanim, okay, in each city. I mean, really, pretty much in each city that allow Toanim that are adequate and good. I'll give you a klal, which is a pretty good indication of how to approach it, without getting into specific Bais Din, which is that we try to avoid a Beis Din where there's going to be any amount of politics, which means if you're within a certain kahila, okay, a specific kahila, and especially if the other side is a powerful person in that kahila, or you're a powerful person, if you go to a Beis Din within that kahila, it's going to be very difficult to hear the Din Torah, right? So the best thing, your best bet is getting the Din Torah to a different type of place, which is not necessarily specifically in your Dalet Amos, right? In a different Dalet Amos, that would
give us three Bais Din. You say the one in New City, we're actually going to be interviewing Rabbi Gann. Give me two more.
Yeah, and that's, by the way, that's sort of an exception. I brought up because I think it's going to be.
But give us two more. We're running out of time, so Rabbi Tuvya, give us two more. Who would you want to go to? You're called to a Din Torah. You would say, here I'm going to get a real hearing. Who would it be?
There's a Beis Din on Lakewood, also by the name of Cohen, but Dov Cohen. That's a different, no relation.
Okay, number two. Okay, number two. Who's the third one?
I've heard very good things about them, very positive things. Obviously, in terms of Skana Dayanim in America, is Rav Landesman in Muncie, who is one of the preeminent Dayanim, famous for many Din Torahs, also in Ishus and also in Momonos. So his opposite, he has a Beis Din, color Rabbanim, which has been around for many years and has a very positive name. If the results can be what you want, I can't promise you ever going to get the results you want by going to a Beis Din. But I can tell you that you go to sort of these Bais Din with names and that have been around for a long time and have a good reputation, that the case will be heard. The case will be heard, and then even if the halacha doesn't come out the way you wanted to, but that's at least you knew the process was fair. The process was fair, and that's what you're looking for. And also, I'll tell you something else. Another issue is also an important thing is to have a dayanim with enough experience that they're not afraid of Toanim. And this I say as a person who is represents people in court.
Give us one more Beis Din you would go to.
You already asked for three. I gave you three already. I think it's enough. But
okay.
But wait, another option is Zabla, but I'll point something out with Zabla. And Zablas are very tricky. Zablas, of course, where you choose a dayan, the other side choose a dayan, the two dayanim choose a third dayan. Zabla can be very.
Joining us from Cleveland, Ohio, is Rabbi Yaakov Rappaport, who's a Talmud of Shara Torah, of Brisk, of Rabbi Fleischman's Koil in Eretz Yisroel, the B'chai Shemishma. We've had Rabbi Fleischman on many times. He's been both a Toya and a Zabla. He's also a trial attorney. So, welcome, Rabbi Rappaport.
Thank you.
So, Rabbi Rappaport, as somebody who's both tried cases in both federal court as well as Beis Din, can you try to juxtapose the two and compare the two and tell us what the experience is like in both?
So coming from not a Dayan's perspective or a Zabla perspective, but as someone who was an advocate for someone in both arenas, Beis Din is for sure, without a doubt, a little bit more intensive. It's harder to ascertain what the Dayanim are looking for, what I should be preparing for, versus in federal court or in state court, it's not like that. And I'll explain why. Most cases in America, I would say 5% of them, of filed lawsuits in the United States of America or less, do not go to trial. In the American justice system, we have a long discovery procedure to ascertain evidence from each side. There's multiple negotiations between both parties, and rarely do you go to trial. When you go to trial, it's very intense. Both attorneys and both parties are usually up the night before or nights before, and it's a lot of intensive work. And that rarely occurs in any court case. When you go to Beis Din, it's almost every case is going to trial, because you're always going in front of the Beis Din. The evidence is presented most of the time in front of the Dayanim. The oral arguments are always happening in front of the Dayanim. So it's in essence, every case is a trial case, which by nature is more intense and harder work and more agmas nefesh for everyone. So it's basically going to trial every time. Every Beis Din case is like going to trial.
Okay, and what is the experience like now? You're in Beis Din, you're in court, compared it to in front of the Beis Din, in front of the court.
So in court, this is, a lot of people, they say they don't want to go to Beis Din. They have very negative opinions or perspectives on Beis Din. And I'm not justifying anyone or any experience, but why that comes from, I'll give you a mashal. In America, I know you're a businessman. Most of businesses in America are incorporated in Delaware. Why do businesses in America always incorporate in Delaware? The reason is not because we love Delaware. Most people can't point it out in a map. It's because the corporate law and business law and procedure of dealing with fights between businesses are dealt with quicker, more professional, and clearer to all parties in the state of Delaware. And therefore, anyone who starts a business always incorporates in Delaware most of the time because they know how the playing field is going to look and what's going to happen, and they're comfortable. And so that's just a mashal. And that differs. Everyone in America always incorporates in Delaware. So when we go to Beis Din, besides the fact that people don't know anything about the halachas, every Beis Din is totally different. Every Beis Din, there's different obstacles of the Dayanim or the Toanim or the rules, how they play and their own rules. So there's really the unknown. And when you walk into, as an advocate, I walk into a situation, I'm trying to advocate for my client, and I'm trying to get something across to someone. If I don't know the rules and I don't know what I'm allowed to say for them, what I'm not allowed to say, what they want me to say, or when it's my turn to speak even, it becomes difficult and a challenge and frustrating. Versus if you try a court and set...
But Rabbi, the Shulchan Aruch, the rules are, in an Orthodox Beis Din, you would assume are the same. It's the Shulchan Aruch, it's the Rishonim, it's the Ephraim, it's the Poseik. What do you mean the rules are different?
So this is the answer. The rules regarding what the halachas should be, you're 100% correct. That's clear. You open a Shulchan Aruch, someone knows the facts clearly, and they want to apply the facts to the law with research and learning. You could probably come across some kind of conclusion, and you could argue that conclusion. But how to get there, how to present the facts, how to do it, there's no clarity in Shulchan Aruch 1,000% how, when you walk in, how that's done. There's no halachas for Toanim in Shulchan Aruch. If you open the Shulchan Aruch and you read the whole Shulchan Aruch of Choshen Mishpat, I don't think, to my knowledge, there's any time it says a Toen could say this and a Toen could say that, and a Toen's allowed to say this and he's not allowed to say that. And this is who should. All those laws and the intricacies and thusly are not specific. It's open into interpretation. It's open to how the Beis Din wants it.
So how does that affect you? So now
the fact that that's not pre-established and known to all parties clearly and definitively before walking in, it kind of keeps everyone on their toes. And someone who is a Toen in that Beis Din many times or knows the Dayanim, has coffee with them on occasion, would be more comfortable and would know what he's expecting to do and to say, versus someone who the first time walks in, he's not going to know those procedures. And so that already creates the uncertainty and confusion. It's like litigating a case in an international court, right? No one wants to go overseas to Zimbabwe and litigate something because they don't know what the rules are. And even if there are rules, who knows how this tribunal is going to use the rules. So it happens to be in all these subtle, small issues, there's no, to my knowledge, in halacha and in all the Batei Dinim in America or outside of America, there's no unanimous decision of this is how it's going to proceed.
So
everything's on the cuff.
So does this create an unfairness, like towards the litigants?
So unfairness, I wouldn't say that word. That's an incorrect word because who's to judge what's fair and what's not fair? Ultimately, we're going to Beis Din because we believe the Dayanim know better and know the halacha and are going to apply the halacha, but it's the unknown to the person walking in. And so that's why I think everyone loves secular court. And to be honest with you, you know what? At the end of the day, Judges are lazy, a lot of them. They don't do their due diligence. Their clerks don't do enough research they need to do. They don't spend that much time on it, but the perception and the experience is one of organization and civil procedure, and we know where we're going with everything. And so someone who has a large case in front of them, they're comfortable doing that, because at the end of the day, like I said, people go to Delaware. Why are they incorporating Delaware? Not because they're going to win. They just want to know what they're getting into. People who litigate, go to any court system, they want to know that the person behind the bench, be it a judge or a dayan, is going to spend time on the matter, is going to investigate the matter, and it's going to be presented in a way that they know how it's going to be presented before they walk in. But if you know the unknown, we're scared of the unknown. And so that's the difficulty. And that's why people say the Beis Din's the Wild West. Why the Wild West? The Wild West, there's no cops. There's no one knows what's going on. And therefore, that, and the procedural part of it, that's what creates confusion and fear. But it's not the halachas. Of course, everyone wants to keep the halachas, and it's better to keep the halachas. However, people get nervous about that.
Rabbi Rappaport, as a Toen or as a Zabla, have you seen Toanim abuse the Beis Din?
Absolutely, no question in my mind. There are many Toanim that abuse the system.
Share with us a few examples. Like most of our listeners have never been to a Beis Din, and there are many people, who are not geribin, so to say. They're not sophisticated. They're not business people. They don't necessarily know how to articulate their positions. Tell Chana, Razel, Yossel, Mendel out there, what is there to be concerned about if you're called to a Din Torah?
So I want to I'll get to that in a moment. I want to just answer the question with the word, it depends. There are many fantastic Toanim, and there are many non-fantastic Toanim, terrible Toanim. So it depends. This is whatever statement I'm about to say, I don't want to say that, all Toanim. It's not all. It depends. And so, Toanim don't have to go by professional ethical rules. I'm an attorney. I am not allowed to lie. It is illegal. I cannot lie. If I would lie, I'd be held to an ethical committee, and it would maybe cost my license. If I lie in any aspect, because an attorney is supposed to be someone of truth, a messenger of the court, and he cannot lie or mislead people or do any, there's a whole list of rules. In the Torah, we have those rules and more. Right? In the Torah, everyone has to keep those rules, not even the lawyers. The secular society is only the lawyers. But in Halacha, you would assume everyone does. But practically, when they go to Beis Din, a lot of Toanim will know somehow, you get the impression, they know this dayan from before. They know a shloger of the dayan, or they saw him at a chasana. Let's devoch. You have a lot of the dayanim and the toanim know each other before, and that leads to problems of them being impartial, and that also leads to problems that the toyan will take advantage of the other person's lack of knowledge. Like he'll know this dayan does this. He's been by this dayan 20 times, so he'll fool the other side and confuse the other side in order to know how the dayan will react. Or he'll do many things.
But wait, slow down. In court, it's this. I would argue it's the same exact thing. Somebody knows this judge. They've been in front of them many times. They were in the same. They were in the same firm together, et cetera, et cetera. They know how the judge thinks. I mean, you don't think there's cronyism in the court system?
There obviously is, but you have to understand, if I put it to pen and paper and you tell me, Rappaport, tell me the 10 or 15 Toanim in America, I could probably write a list of 10, 15 of them, and I don't know if there's any more that really know what they did in America. Lawyers, I go to court in Kings County in New York. There's 1,000 attorneys that know this lawyer. There's 5,000 attorneys that know how this judge works. We could figure out how this judge works. There's less of that in the secular court. I'm not saying there's not. There's not, but you feel that there's less, and so you got to be careful. And so Beis Din obviously is the best place to go and the place we all should go. But I have to just tell the listeners that the word depends means you have to go to a competent Beis Din and be wary of the Toen. These Toanim, some of the times, I get emails on one side. I had a Toen send me 30, 40 emails in one day. I've never had opposing counsel send me 40 emails in one day of yelling and screaming and insults and things that are just out of his mind. The Beis Din didn't do anything about it. It's like eating food in Eretz Yisroel. You look at a hechsher, it has Hebrew on it, you assume it's good, and you eat it. That's incorrect. You can't do that. You have to look at the hechsher, where the hechsher come from, and where the Rav Machshir. The same thing with a Beis Din. You have to know about the Beis Din. You have to know who you're going in front of. There is some that are extremely competent and know how to deal with the Toanim and all their shtick and the way they lie and the way they deal with things. And there's some Batei Dinim that do not. And it's the job of a Yid to get the kosher and Esra, to get the kosher lulav, and to get the kosher Beis Din.
Who do you consider a Beis Din that you say, my name is Mendel, or Dovid, or Zalman, or Rivka, or Rachel, Leah? I get called by somebody to a Din Torah. I don't know anything about the process. Like, how do I know, is the Beis Din a good Beis Din? You have a lot of Rabbanim who are very sweet and holy people who don't know anything about Dinei Torah. And it's like,
that's correct. That's 100% accurate.
So it's hashlich al Hashem Yavcha. If somebody doesn't want to rely on their rabbi, they want to rely on their rabbi to give them a vert of his Cyrus, and their rabbi is not a litigator. So you've been called.
So the answer to that is, so if a rabbi doesn't know,
you don't know anything. So what would you tell them to do? You're the rabbi. What would you say?
So I would tell them, if they have a rabbi that's willing to advise them on something he doesn't know about, that they need a new rabbi anyway. Because I don't like this excuse that they don't know. You know what you know what you don't know. I don't know if someone's advising someone to go somewhere. I don't think he could plead that he was just taking advantage of your job when you have a zapsak, you have a shayla, you have to figure it out. That's the job. Don't answer the question.
So the rabbi doesn't know. What would you're the rabbi. What would you tell him?
I would say this is an issue. Your job is to figure out, to find a rabbi that would know the correct Beis Din. Just like we have just like in Shidduchim. Rabbi
Rappaport, I'm asking you're Rabbi Rappaport. I come to you. I heard this program. I say, Rabbi Rappaport, I was called to a dindira in front of Beis Din Pliny. What do I do? They're going to have a Toen there. They're going to have, they hire this fellow, that fellow. Give me some advice. What do I do?
The answer is go to the nearest Orthodox Jew or rabbi that understands the system and ask him. If you don't know anyone, you should call Rabbi Lichtenstein after the program and ask him who to send you to.
But why won't you appoint?
Because I don't want to. I prefer not saying specific names. I mean, I know there's great. Rabbi Fleischman's Beis Din Eretz Yisroel is great. Rabbi Goldfein's Beis Din in Lakewood is great. There are certain.
Who in America would you say here's a Beis Din? Insist upon going to this Beis Din. Who would you say?
I would say if you go to the Bais in Lakewood, that's a very competent, very honest, one of the beautiful Beis Din, young guys really trying to do the right thing, get everything together, really remedy all these situations. That's one that I've experienced.
Would you insist and say, listen, if they allow Toanim, you shouldn't go, or would you say if so and so is a Toen, don't go?
I would not say that. Once you have the right court, I trust. Once you have the right Beis Din, the answer is like this. The answer is once you have the correct Beis Din, then which is the hardest decision, really. Once you have that, then you work backwards and see if they accept the Toen, so you get the Toen that you feel is the best. Now, you don't have to get a Toen. I want to reiterate something that I don't know if you talked about in the last program. This Toen concept that we all talked about, we've discussed. I don't know if it's a new concept that came up to my knowledge in Europe prior to the war. All Dinei Torah, everyone hired a Toen. Stop hiring a Toen. You shouldn't have to hire a Toen. If the Beis Din is a competent Beis Din and they know what they're doing, to me, I don't really think you need a Toen. People hire me, or sometimes they use me in places maybe that are scary for them. But if it's a competent, good Beis Din and they tell the truth and they walk in, the Beis Din should protect them because there's no requirement halacha you have to hire a Toen.
Yeah, but let's. I'm going to take the other side of this respectfully. And we had Rabbi Grouse made this position, but I don't disagree with it. You know, the reason why we use a helmet and pads when people play football is because you want to put distance between you and the point of impact. I think for your average person who's not a litigator, it's incredibly stressful. And saying you cannot use somebody who does this for a living, who's not going to be stressed by it because it's not his money or not his blood or not his marriage, whatever it may be on the line, I don't think that's necessarily fair. And I would take the position, right, that Toanim, I see a purpose in them, But I also would say, and you could disagree with me, I mean, this is an open forum, I would also take the position, though, that if there are Toanim who don't play by any rules, any halacha rules, any hashkafa rules, any menschlichkeit rules, and we have had some of them named and probably well known. There are those that they're animals, right? I would say
that's correct. That's correct.
In the Shtari Birur, it should say, if you do not take a Toen who I agree to, because I don't think the person plays by any rules, I will not sign a Shtar Birurim.
The Beis Din doesn't control him. The one who's at fault is the Beis Din, not no one else, because that's their job. And if you get the right Beis Din, you do whatever you want in the job, Zabla. I don't think you have to do that, because if a right Beis Din knows how to control everyone.
Yeah, but I've seen reputable Beis Din who just can't control the Toanim.
Well, I think I would question their reputability, if that's a word or not. If they can't control Dayanim, they have an issue. They should have shut it down and done something.
Well, I was called once to the Beis Din Machonei Ra in Muncie, which is arguably one of the most reputable Batei Dinim in America, and they absolutely had no ability to control the Toanim.
They have a problem then. They have a problem. If that's what occurred, it's absolutely there to blame. No question. It's their fault, and they're to blame. You can't blame the Toen. They have to control it. They agreed to let him in. They continue to do whatever he did. He let them. They're the referee. I mean, there shouldn't be a referee. And if they can't control him, then there's a problem in them as well. I'm not saying they're not reputable. I'm not judging any Beis Din, but I'm just saying, if it gets out of control, the one to blame, if kids get out of control, it's the parents' fault. Toanim gets out of control, it's the Beis Din's fault.
Have you had any horror stories at Batei Din because of the inability to control Toanim?
Yes. And I don't know if it's the inability to control. I would phrase it differently. A lot of, Batei Dinim, it's some of them, they don't do it as a full-time job. They learn first and second Seder, and Banis Darm, they deal with the Dinei Torah. And a Din Torah is a complex, hard matter to deal with. It's not a pastime sport. It's something that the Beis Din has to be involved with and dealing with. And so, sometimes humans are humans, and rabbis are rabbis. And sometimes, if someone's not getting paid enough or they're full-time, they're not putting energy and things slip by them, and the Toanim take advantage of such a person. And so I think it's our job as being members of the Yiddish community to ensure we have competent Batei Dinim, and the Beis Din kind of being pushed around by the Toen, naming on all the facts, not even hearing the facts, not even arguing the facts, just made a psak and decided for one side, just to do what they want to do, which I can't begin to understand that. That was a horror story I went through once. I went through a horror story once where the Dayanim were basically falling asleep during the Din Torah, didn't even hear what was going on, and the Toen was just feeding them whatever they wanted to feed them while they were sleeping. There's a lot of Batei Dinim that, our job is to get the right Batei Dinim. Our job is to get competent Batei Dinim. And on the flip side, I was in a Beis Din once, which I think it's a very reputable Beis Din. I won't say the name of the Beis Din. And I was dealing with not so Hamish Yidden in the Beis Din. The other side wanted to do depositions during the litigation and have a court reporter come to the Beis Din. I opposed because I don't see in halacha any reason to have a court reporter come in, and I don't see any reason to pay for depositions. It's expensive, and there's Shtenish and Shulchan Aruch and Chazedus Azach. And they brought in the Beis Din in front of the Dayanim and the Toanim a court reporter in a miniskirt during a Din Torah to type up the Tainas. It was a Din Torah over a shul as well. It was a little bit crazy. So that Beis Din went out of its way to stel suit to the secular way, an organized way of doing things. They went overboard. They said if one side wants to do depositions and they want to do a court report, or the other side has to pay for it, and they have to do it like a regular court case. In Mishum Ha'al, just go to a regular court. So, you can't go overboard. A lot of these, but they did them. They say professionalism, and it's like a regular secular court. I just want to get clear. My position is that obviously in Shulchan Aruch it says you have to go to Beis Din. And I think there's two sides to the coin. There's one side to the coin is that, we, as the Orthodox Jew, we must get into Beis Din and we can't go to secular court. But on the other hand, we have to dan l'chapsus and understand why someone would not want to go to Beis Din under all these circumstances, albeit that they're wrong or they're ena miskaven, or they're b'shoigeg in their decision to go to secular court. But I think lashon hara on both sides is, you shouldn't speak lashon hara about someone who goes to secular court because you don't know what's going on in his cup and what happened. You can't speak lashon hara about anyone. Mitzat sheni, you have to try your best to go to a right Beis Din. It's hard. There's no guidance. I understand all that. That doesn't mean that you're potter. It doesn't mean that, again, getting a kosher esrog is difficult sometimes. If you're not in the right place, doesn't make you potter from getting an esrog.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Rabbi Rappaport.
Call to thank you.
Bye-bye. Let's go to the chosen winner of this week's riddle.
Hi, I just wanted to answer the riddle for this week's riddle on parsha Torah. The Chatan Sofer has several pshatim. Why there's a small chaf when it says v'liv kosa, and one of the pshatim, from what I remember, is that if you take away the chaf, it actually spells ulevita as opposed to v'liv kosa. And the pshat is that he says over there that Kozman, that his Torah was still alive, so he was comforted, although his daughter died, because of the fact that he still has Torah Imenu. He was never sad to a certain extent about his daughter dying. But once Torah Imenu died, all of a sudden he was now mastered. It was not only as if he lost his wife, he also lost his daughter once again. So that's the pshat. This called the Torah Ulevita.